She loves me when I'm drunk. She loves me when I'm jobless. She loves me when I'm wrong. Even when I don't need love. Yeah, she loves me like that. Like damn, damn, damn. Like damn, 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 damn. She loves me when I'm drunk. She loves me when I'm jobless. She loves me when I'm lost.
So you can't be.
Even when I don't need love. Yeah, she loves me like that. Like damn, damn, damn. Like damn, 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 damn. I know what you like. I know I'm your type. I know I was wrong. About time right. I just want your love. Don't wanna fight. You walk out my life. I'ma take a hike. She love me like damn. Love you so much I can't pipe down. No longer looking for wife now. I'm about 6 seconds from tight down. She love me when no one else could help me not hurt myself. I love you like oh my God. She seems to love all my scars. Telling all the girls I'm on your side. Telling all my boys I'm on your side. Know what the she be doing she every time I try. She loves me when I'm drunk. She loves me when I'm jobless. She loves me when I'm lost. Even when I need love, yeah. She loves me like that. Like damn, damn, damn. Like damn, 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 damn. I know my show. I know my show. Whoa, whoa. I know my show. I know my show. I know I'm a bad boy. I know get walk. I did smoke cigar. I did blow skunk. I know I get boys. We dey do wrongs. We dey tie chica. And we dey shoot gun. I know you want airports. Make we try talk. We dey form liver. But we dey fear God. Like my father don't talk. Say me she just drop. But she loves me. That she no go yago. She loves me when I'm drunk. She loves me when I'm jobless. She loves me when I'm lost. Even when I don't need love. Yeah, she loves me like that. Like damn, damn, damn.
Check, check. Hello, everyone. For all of those getting registered, for those of you guys that are already registered, we're going to get started in about 10 minutes. So please grab some seats. We'd love for this front row section to be full. And then we've got extra seating, of course, right over here adjacent to the side. But we'd love to see your lovely faces up front. And we'd love to have you guys as engaged as possible. Thank you.
Only thing is I don't really care. People wonder how I keep a smile.
I don't know.
Cause I don't give a fuck. I've been in my slippers for a while. Even though my haters show me love, yeah. I just wish I'm well though. Hope you getting money. Hope you doing well though. Heard your sister love me. I'm in Colorado. Do not fucking add me. I've been on vacation. Cause I need it badly. Hotel California, my escape. Pulling up in Mexico with New York City plates. Ay, neighbors want a photo when I visit where I stay. Ay, if you talking drama, get the fuck up out my face. Ay, dodging bad vibes like skirt. Drama on my line like skirt. Left it in the cash like skirt.
Streaming online.
Get into the bag like skirt. Skirt, 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 skirt. Skirt, 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 skirt. People really think my life is perfect. Maybe cause I'm laughing through the worst shit. Yeah, I know the devil is a lie, but the way that I've been moving got him nervous. Back, I hope you know you did your thing.
You have the link?
Get your rest cause homie, you deserve it.
Cool.
Ocean always deeper than it seems. People only looking at the surface.
Maybe Tanya will connect.
Paparazzi caught me hopping on
Connect
my
on
bag. Ayy,
Telegram
hopping in the
or whatever.
Uber on my way to get the bag. Ayy, used to drink a bottle every day cause I was sad. Ayy, I hit up my dad like I hope that we could pass things. Woman could not put me in my feelings, nigga, fuck that. If she do not want the realest nigga, then she dumb whack. I don't ever trip, but I bet that you would love that. I don't ever trip, llama on my line like skirt. Left it in the trash like skirt. Get into the bag like skirt. Skirt, 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 skirt. Skirt, 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 skirt. Yummy, yummy, yeah, yummy, woosai. 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 Yummy, yummy, yeah, yummy, woosai.
I can leave it on the table there. Well,
Standing.
just point in that direction because the receiver's over there.
The guy there.
Yeah, that's our receiver man.
Is it okay for me to stand and walk around, camera wise?
Yeah, you can track it. Yeah, if you want to walk, you can walk.
What do you prefer?
Generally, we don't like people walking because it's more work for the guys, but we can do it.
But standing here.
Yeah, that's fine.
Better than sitting.
If you are going to walk around, this road is tracking you. So if you are going to walk around, that's our main track. That's our main thing. So if you're going to be dressing your camera, all you can do is rubbish. Otherwise, you can't play personality as well.
And here or there.
Here,
Standing is better, but where is a good spot?
I would say try and stay more next to you. You see the spotlight over there? Yeah, so good. Yeah, I just always remember pointing that direction.
Anything more to test? Windows testing. 1, 2, 3. That works well. Cool.
If you need anything. Okay, cool. Here, I'll take it. Thank you so much.
Check, check.
Don't know if you got a girl.
You've done a lot of.
Don't know this risk, but all of you pull my world. I even dream of you, I swear. Visions of you and I. See you all around my way. Been meaning to say hi, but I'm just way too shy. I got
All right. How's everyone doing this lovely morning? Happy Thursday to you guys, especially y'all up in the front row. I appreciate y'all. Real excited for you guys to be here. Second edition of W3Node. And I just want to open with a little bit of gratitude. Gratitude for the students that are here, for our participants in our hackathon. We'll talk a little bit about that later. To our speakers, to our sponsors. But I wanted to start with a reminder on why this event exists. Node Engine is a platform to showcase African founders and to connect them with the global foundations to build commercially viable companies. This is more than just skill development. This is entrepreneurship. This is teaching you guys how to become operators, for you guys to be able to perform and execute and compete at a global level. So this is our second edition, and we're really excited to be back here in Cape Town, right here at Timeout Market, with a global cohort of developers and ecosystem partners. So with that said, let's do a roll call. I know we've got a lot of communities here. Do we've got Cello Dow in the house? Yeah? Okay. University of Cape Town, I know, is representing. There you go. That's what's up, y'all. Web3 Way. I know you guys are around in the hackathons. I see y'all. Africa's Blockchain Club. There we go. Kadabo, if you're watching, we miss you, brother. Ethereum Nigeria. I know we've got a couple of those folks here in the house. HerDAO. There we go. How are you doing, my dear? Oxship. No, not up front. But I know for sure we think code. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. So let's talk really quickly about our agenda today and what's happening. So this morning we're going to have the conference. We've got an amazing speaker lineup. Really excited to introduce a bunch of these folks to you. Then we're going to have lunch, and we're going to transition to We Think Code for the second part of the afternoon, evening, and that is our hackathon component. And then this afternoon, we're going to have the hackathon tracks and mentoring. I will be teaching one of the tracks there. So really excited to be hanging out with you guys, developers in the trenches, as they like to say. So I just want to remind you guys to RSVP for our side events. We had one last night with Pizza Dow. Did anyone get a chance to go? Yeah? How was that event? It was awesome, right? Yeah, Funkama is a homie. Really glad that he came out to put that together. So for tonight, we do have our VIP dinner. We've got our community event tomorrow night, and then we've got our after party Saturday evening. So if you guys want to shake a leg, that's what we'll be getting down. So some real quick housekeeping. Please do not lose your badges. Your badges are essential. You're going to need them to get access here to Timeout Market and to We Think Code. And for the hackers, if you haven't, please, please, please register on Builderbase, excuse me. If you need any support with that, Alan is floating around. Alan can absolutely support you in that space. And let's keep it going. Once again, tag us on social. There are going to be some unexpected surprises if you guys get involved in that sense. So please tag us on social if you can repost. And just a reminder, this is a hybrid event. So we want as many people to participate as possible. Even if they can't be here IRL, they can definitely check out URL. So real quick, we want to say a thank you to our sponsors, JPYR. I see you guys stepping into the house. Guys, give them a hand. We've got ETH Global that pulled up. Grateful for you. We Think Code, obviously, as one of our sponsors, and Builderbase, of course, with the community platform, really helping our hackathon builders operate as a team. So we're really grateful for you guys. Just some real quick announcements. We are going to have prizes for people that show up early. So tomorrow's event, pull up. You won't be disappointed. And we are going to have bus and transportation instructions a little bit later. So keep an eye out. Logan should be helping me with that. So when we transition from here to We Think Code, we're going to be able to support you there. Alrighty. So now I'd like to get started with our first guest, Miss Nawalzi. Hey, would you like to come on stage?
Thank you.
Yeah, so Nawalzi, she's going to be talking. She's got a keynote. And go on, step on stage, girl. This is for you. I'm going to step off stage, and it's going to be important for you. But I'd like for you to share a little bit about your background and what brought you here to this stage, especially for some of you young engineers here, right?
All right.
Yeah.
So good morning, everyone. My name is Nolowazi Hlope. I'm a senior specialist within the FinTech department of the Financial Sector Conduct Authority. So apart from that, I teach, and I'm also studying myself, so I'm both student and teacher at UCT. I saw some UCT folks here. I'm doing my master's in FinTech with the UCT Innovation Hub, and it's been quite the journey, and so I think I understand a bit of what you're going through when you're developing code. As last year, we built a decentralized lending app as our class project. So I'm looking forward to being here. I'm excited to be here to engage with you, to listen to your side of the story, and understand as a regulator how we can better support you. Thank you.
All right, everybody, give her a round of applause.
All right, again, good morning. Good morning to the builders, the visionaries, and the leaders in this room. As I've said, my name is Nolowazi Hlope, and today I'll be discussing the G20 blockchain and its promise in Africa. So I'm sitting here today just 2 months after South Africa has exited or has concluded its presidency of the G20. And for the last year, while many of you were heads down building protocols, deploying smart contracts and wrestling with the complexities of code, we were in a different kind of trench. We were sitting in closed rooms with the world's most powerful finance ministers and central bank governors. One of the engagements we had was artificial intelligence in the South African financial sector, where we collaborated as the FSCA with the OECD to discuss what implications the financial sector faces in the age of AI. As you can imagine, we're all here. I think I saw someone new, you had ChatGPT open on your laptop. Or someone, yeah. And so, I mean, we've become very familiar with it within the school world, and within our work environment, we have Copilot to be the assistant of our work. So I know usually that when someone from the regulator, such as the FSCA, walks in on stage at a Web3 conference, the room temperature drops by about 5 degrees, right? Because you're expecting me to come and try shut down everything. Whereas on our side, we're looking to enable responsible innovation. So as I've said, you tighten up. You wonder if I'm here to audit your GitHub repo, but relax, I'm not here to check your commit history, and I definitely won't ask you why you pushed to production on a Friday afternoon. So I'm here because if you strip away the diplomatic language and the press details, the G20 presidency concluded with a single undeniable engineering problem that affects every single person in this room. The consensus was stark in the sense that the global financial system as it stands today is slow, too expensive, and too exclusive for the global south. We've been given a clear mandate by the Financial Stability Board, or the FSB, to have set a target goal for 2027 to fix cross-border payments. The targets are specific, right? They want the cost of sending money across borders to be less than 3%, where it currently stands at 8%. And I'm thinking that, and they want 75% of those payments to be credited to the recipient within 1 hour. But in those meetings, we faced a very hard realization in the sense that governments can write the policy targets. We do that at the FSCA, policy recommendations, and so on. We set the rules, but every developer in this room knows just because it works on local hosts doesn't mean it will work in production. So the old rails, such as the legacy databases and COBOL mainframes, have been humming in the basement since 1980. And these seemingly simply cannot support the new speed that is required or envisioned by the FSB in reducing transaction costs and also increasing transaction speed. So the G20 has identified the what, and now it is your responsibility to build the how. And so the anatomy of exclusion is something I want to dig deep into right now. Because I know we have speakers today from major exchanges. I think tomorrow we have wallet providers who will talk about market cap and market caps and adoption curves. But my job is to talk about the human cost of the current infrastructure. So as I said, current costs for cross-border payments stand at 8%. But that sounds like an arbitrary number, right? 8%, put it down, move on. But what does this actually mean to the person on the ground? This serves as a tax on the poor because it's a week's worth of groceries for the family in Zimbabwe. It's a new pair of school shoes for the child in Lesotho. It is the difference between a small business in Kailisha restocking their inventory for the month or closing their doors for the week. I recently looked at the remittance slips of a domestic worker in Cape Town, sending money to her mother. The fees she paid to the money transfer operator were higher than the interest she would have earned in a savings account in a full year. So why does this happen? It's not because bankers are evil, right? It's because the current system in itself is inefficient by design. To move money from Cape Town to a supplier in Vietnam, that money might have to hop through New York, London, and Tokyo before it arrives. And every hop costs money and adds friction to the system. So the system traps liquidity. It forces African businesses to hold massive amounts of dormant capital in foreign accounts just to facilitate trade. So we cannot talk about the African Renaissance or economic growth while bleeding 8% of our value to the plumbing of the old financial system, or rather the plumbing of the current financial system. And as many of you know, South Africa recently exited the FATF grey list. So that's a big win for everyone in this room as well, because the regulation has been clear, particularly around crypto assets. We've licensed over 300 crypto asset service providers, and we deliberately call them crypto assets and not cryptocurrencies because of our definition of currency and money as the regulators. So they're seen as an asset rather than a form of currency. So I pause on this because it's a massive victory that often gets lost in the noise. For the last few years, we've operated with a cloud over our economy. Every transaction leaving South Africa or entering South Africa was scrutinized, and the cost of doing business was inflated by the risk premium that we didn't deserve. But we did the hard work. We tightened our frameworks, provided regulatory clarity around crypto assets and crypto asset service providers, and we are no longer in a risky emerging market that passively is adopting technology. We are the sovereign innovation hub, and Cape Town, I think, is the largest innovation hub in Africa, to be confirmed. This forward momentum is concrete. Right now, the Intergovernmental FinTech Working Group, or the IFWG, which is a membership of all financial regulators in South Africa, is working on developing stablecoin policy recommendations. So it'll also provide clarity around the what, the how the regulators are thinking of enforcing actions in the stablecoin realm. We're also investigating tokenization in South Africa, where we'll then develop policy recommendations as the IFWG, which will in turn turn into regulatory frameworks per specific regulator and their mandate. So we've cleared the regulatory roadblocks so that you can build. We've moved past the Wild West era speculation into an era of licensed, supervised, and institutional grade innovation. So as regulators, you see that that's why we have fintech departments in different regulators, because our mandate is clear. We seek to encourage market development through innovation, while enabling it responsibly for the person on the ground. So this brings us to the promise of the blockchain technology itself. While the colleagues from ZARP will talk about their specific stablecoin, and the team from Wallet Connect will discuss interoperability standards, my view from the regulator's desk is on the macroeconomic infrastructure. The problem here is scale. I think we can all agree. And the solution is finally ready. We're seeing a shift where developers in Africa, many of whom are sitting here, are no longer just forking code from Silicon Valley. You are building core infrastructure that is specific to our needs, or that is fit for purpose for the South Africans. And this matters because rails versus rates dynamic. While a traditional bank will struggle to lower fees by a fraction of a percentage, blockchain layer 2 solutions have effectively solved the cost problem. From an engineering standpoint, this is the only technology capable of meeting G20's efficient targets. You have built a settlement engine that is 1,000 times faster than SWIFT. So we're seeing the market vote with its feet. According to the data we track, 43% of all crypto transaction volume in sub-Saharan Africa is stable coins. And I'd just like to just want to see from your side, how many of you think stable coins are the next thing in South Africa? Agreed. So it'd be very interesting to see some of the work that we're doing. And just on a side note, if you are working on stable coins to launch, please reach out to me. I'm happy to share my email after this talk, so that we can have these discussions with the IFWG as well to learn from you. So, as I was saying, this is critical. This is a critical signal because 5 years ago, crypto in Africa was about speculation, buying an asset and hoping it went to the moon. Today, it's about survival. It's about trade. So, however, we cannot just leave you with all this praise. We have to consider that we haven't won the last mile yet. There's continually been a struggle because of liquidity management and agent management to be able to meet the customer's needs. And I'm sure many of you know about mobile money that started off in Kenya and has spread wildly in Africa. Disappointing to not see it in South Africa, especially because this financial system is bank-based. But I say this because, on the last mile, they've been particularly efficient, but still gaps remain. So the technology is cheap, but the access is still often expensive and complex. The G20 has given you the green light to policy goals. The FSCA has given you a clean regulatory slate with the grey list exit. But the user experience is still failing to meet the people who need it most. So one thing that's very important here is to consider the consumer and the element of financial literacy and education, that this comes in layers. You have to start first with the digital literacy for them to understand exactly what am I doing online, how am I controlling my activity. Then you need to move on to financial literacy, where then now you can start teaching them about the different products that are available as crypto assets were declared a financial product by the FSCA. If my grandmother in Soweto wants to access efficiency of the blockchain, she currently faces a wall of complexity. She has to understand what a seed phrase is. She has to fear that if she loses her phone, she loses her life savings. She has to worry about gas fees that fluctuate wildly. And this is not financial inclusion. This is exclusion by complexity. Because a lot of people argue that all these new innovations have potential for financial inclusion, but how can you include someone who doesn't know anything about it? So this is my challenge to you as the developers and the designers in this room. Your job is to build the user experience that bridges the gap. We need account abstraction so that security is visible, recovery is social. We need gas sponsorship models so that a user never has to buy Ethereum just to spend USDC or, no, that's ZARP. We need wallets that feel simple and safe and as intuitive as WhatsApp. So when I was telling you earlier about the project we did on building a decentralized lending app, we had a wallet that sat on Telegram. So the whole experience would sit on Telegram, start your wallet and start sending, trading and so on. So I believe that this can be done. The challenge is for you to use this underlying technology that we know, blockchain, that is the underlying infrastructure, and build it also for the formal financial sector. We're seeing quite a few banks also adopting blockchain. So with this foundational technology, you're given all the opportunity to work and develop products that are fit for purpose. And to bring to the regulation aspect, we're currently also working on publishing a crypto asset market study, which updates the one we published in 2022, I think, or 2023. So to show you what the landscape looks like, what's happening, what are the new developments in the technology. And I think this will be very relevant for you, so just keep an eye out. Because we sit here today, all of you know the technology, but I also think it's important for you to know the regulation around the technology so that you have regulatory clarity, which most people are looking for, and you have the kind of insights and can work with the regulator to test out new products. Because we do have a sandbox within the IFWG, and we're always open to receiving applications from products that do not neatly fit into the regulatory frameworks that exist. And also there's a potential amendment on the Financial Sector Regulation Act that says that it's upcoming, that the regulator can license an institution if they deem the product to be a financial product, even if it may not exist in the current frameworks. So at least gives us leeway to test more products, gives us leeway to license new innovations as well without a strict licensing regime that has to be developed over years through the normal processes. So my parting words with you today are that we have to look forward to a faster, more efficient payment system. The South African Reserve Bank's Payment Modernization Ecosystem Program speaks to this by allowing non-banks to connect to the national payment system. And leaving you with that, I did say that please think about the consumer, but also think about the merchants and their experience with you, because you offer an easier bridge for their inclusion through things like liquidity pools, where they can actually get loans that they can't get from the traditional financial system. So thank you, keep on innovating and building new things that will enable the growth of this economy. Thank you. I'll pause here for questions.
Hold on 1 second, I'll get you a mic.
I'm curious about the study that you mentioned occurred in 2022, 2023, and also curious about the regulation and how developers should adhere to that. Is there available documentation online where we can read up on that?
Thank you. So we have the IFWG. You know us, the IFWG. So we have the Intergovernmental FinTech Working Group. The website is ifwg.co.za, where we have 3 innovation facilitators. The one is the Regulatory Guidance Unit, which I co-lead, where we're normally the first point of entry for fintechs. We have an inquiry form where you can fill in the specifics of your innovation, then add questions, particularly for the regulators, for us to consider. Then we give you non-binding legal steers. So for example, we just had an application now from a provider that wants to provide a wallet that functions on PayShap rails, and they have a bank sponsor. So they sent that to us, and they asked what regulations do we need to comply with for this innovation. So the way we work is that because all the regulators sit within the IFWG, we consult all of them for you so that you don't have to go through bilateral engagements with each and every one of them. And we consolidate that response towards something that is practical and useful for you. So that is the regulatory guidance unit. Feel free to reach out to us. We're always looking for more queries. And then we've got the regulatory sandbox. Within the sandbox, this is where we test innovations. We were testing a cross-border payment solution a couple of years back with, I forget, but we've been testing quite a lot of products, even crypto asset products, payments with Flash, and a new applicant recently submitted an application for subscription insurance that we're still investigating. So we're open to, even if we're actually specifically open to what does not fit neatly into the current existing regulatory frameworks. So also if you're not sure if you want to test first, you start at the RGU, the Regulatory Guidance Unit. We can give you the feedback and the guidance. If you want to test, then after us, you can progress to the sandbox. Then we also have the Innovation Accelerator. This is where we collaborate to produce research or our blogs, where we publish like the crypto asset policy recommendations, the market study on fintechs in South Africa, and we're conducting another one this year to update that 2019 one to see what the fintech landscape in South Africa looks like. Yeah.
I'm not sure how to phrase this in a more honest question. How does the regulatory model approach the unregulated applications out there? Because I imagine cryptocurrency enables communication without a centralized authority. So I think it would be a popular idea to skirt around regulation. What would the approach be to either enforce that regulation happens, or is there a contingency plan for?
So right now we are researching on decentralized finance. I led the study that we published 2024, where we ran a short survey on the crypto asset service providers. And one of the hurdles we encounter with DeFi is that we have no regulatory perimeter over it. It is cross-border. All you need is an internet connection. There's no KYC information. Maybe the best we could do is track the bank deposit amount from the card to the wallet, whichever wallet you're using, but then we can't trace anything further. We even consulted with your chain analysis, your CSIR, and the problem is still the same. So we're working to think around the regulation and enforcement for DeFi. We're working also with the IAIS, which is the International Association of Insurance Supervisors, to see how that works in insurance as well. So, I mean, IOSCO has a lot of policy recommendations on DeFi, understand the activity, analyze the arrangements, put in a responsible person, and so on. But this becomes harder when you have DAOs. How do you pin the responsibility on someone? So it's still a gray area for us as well. We are working on it and towards policy recommendations, but it's still a work in progress. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you for that. We've got another comment over here.
Just something I picked up on. You said abstracting away the complexity of joining your crypto wallet is very important, right? Like you gave Telegram as an example. So I'm taking that as a point to take away that abstracting that complexity is quite crucial and it's very crucial to integrating it into into South Africa and Africa as a whole.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to
Thank you.
talk about that point.
Because that's one thing that would remove a lot of complexity to enable financial inclusion.
Right.
I mean, who doesn't have WhatsApp? Who doesn't have Telegram?
Right.
So it makes it easier for a person to even sort of understand what they're interacting with. They see their wallet, they can see their balance. And so I think that has a lot of power to include more people, even though we must still face the education stumbling block. Yeah.
Okay, noted. Yeah, I think that's a good point. Write it down.
Awesome. We've got time for one more comment, question.
Hi, I'm Katlako from Kotani Pay and Africa's Blockchain Cloud. So with the rise of stablecoins, the predominant players right now are mostly USDT and USDC. So as we're integrating stablecoins into the national payment system, are we looking at integrating local stablecoins, or are we looking at now integrating with the already established players in the game?
Well, we have some established stablecoin providers in South Africa.
Yeah, I think there's about 6 stablecoins. So
Exactly. So we surveyed them during the stablecoin diagnostic that was conducted by the IFWG. It's on the website under reports. And we got some learnings from there, and we decided that we're currently still looking at it from an internal point of view. We haven't thought about the international stable coins and what that will mean in terms of interoperability or them being used in South Africa. I think that still falls under our dark cloud of decentralized finance that we're still trying to work through. So I know currently that because stable coins fall under our definition of a crypto asset, so the current regulations for crypto asset service providers apply to stablecoin providers. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Kataleko, for that awesome point. Ladies and gentlemen, please give your hand for Nolwazi.
Thank you all so much. Thank you.
Alrighty, guys. Coming up next, we got Fab Trebiowski. And he's an amazing character. He talk a little bit about his background. Lead product manager at Luno, head of product and engineering at FanBlock. Now is focused on wallet partnerships with Wallet Connect. He has a keynote that he is going to be dropping today on us. The keynote is going to be Swipe, Spend, and Settle, the path to native crypto rails. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm hand for Fab Trebiowski.
Thank you, buddy. Hello, everyone. Super excited to be here with you guys today. Beautiful Cape Town. And my name is Fab Trebiowski. I work in partnerships at Wallet Connect. And I'd love to talk about crypto payments today. I think after the talk we had just now, this is very topical. And that's something that's been evolving over the last many years. Let me grab the slide pointer. So it all started with the belief that many of us had in the early days that we had an amazing technology, right? And back in the early 2008, 2010, 2015, with Bitcoin that came around, and we're like, this is amazing tech. If you have that money that can move around the world, you should be able to go around and spend it. So this is going to be a 10-year sort of story. 10 years ago, I was part of the early team at Luno, which is a crypto exchange, one of the first crypto exchange in Africa and South Africa. And we're working in Cape Town and going out at lunchtime to eateries and sometimes bars. Super excited and asking merchants to just accept our Bitcoins. That was obvious to us. Amazing technology, this is money, this is real money, and we're going around. And you know, one of the merchants said yes, but most of the others said no. So that made me realize something early, is that while the idea was right, the ecosystem wasn't ready. And that's how it worked back then, right? You have a wallet, you put your coins, your BTC in there, send that over the chain, over the blockchain, and then you want the recipient to have also a wallet, and magically things happen. That's amazing technology, right? But it wasn't built for commerce. So that was all the promises of crypto, being trustless, decentralized, global. But from a merchant point of view, it was very early days. Merchants don't want to be exposed to price swings. They don't want to be exposed to that complexity. They don't want to be having to deal with that currency that might not have been. Some of the questions were like, is it even legal? So that was very early days, and what the merchants really worry about is paying the suppliers, paying their staff, and using the currency that most people use. Then an amazing amount of technology progress happened over the next few years. We had chain scaling, we had Ethereum coming around, we had faster throughput, amazing amount of work around the chain side of things. On the wallet side, better UX, better multi-chain support. We had stablecoins that arrive as well that unlock a lot of potential. That was amazing technology, right? This was incredible work that had all the potential to unlock payments. So the technology was there, but we were still asking merchants to understand crypto. We're still asking merchants to have wallets. We're still asking them to understand keys, gas, and that wasn't the right moment. So the technology was there, but it wasn't built, it wasn't ready for commerce. On the stablecoin side, we saw tremendous progress. So stablecoins made blockchain and crypto technology more approachable, more familiar. So that's something that people outside of our ecosystem understand. A digital dollar, a digital euro, that makes sense, which was great. So we had all those wallets with a lot of early crypto fanatics sitting with coins and basically value in the wallets, waiting to be spent. And we had stablecoins coming around. So that provided a bottleneck, and we needed a solution. We had on one side the wallets with a huge amount of value stored. On the other side, merchants that were still not understanding crypto. They were not ready for crypto. They didn't want to hear about it. Then came around cards, which was an amazing strategic move. It needed to happen, right? Cards are everywhere. You can spend, that's where the swipe, tap your phone, spend the money. So that was an amazing sort of breakthrough in terms of strategic thinking. Although it sort of made stablecoins, which was crypto-specific in the on-chain world, move back to the old rails, decades-old payment rails. And that sort of made the whole flow slow. Merchants, basically the payments going from a super fast, super advanced, super innovative environment back into the old world, which means slow settlements for the merchants, means high fees. It means more complexity on like chargebacks and fraud. So while these cards enable crypto, well, basically cards made crypto spendable, cards didn't make payments crypto native. So cards were the bridge, but we still needed something crypto native for the payments rail. What's amazing about cards, it's the global acceptance. They go into the established rails. That means that the compliance, the regulations, all this is sorted out. But as I said, the high fees for merchants, the slower settlements made us means that we still needed to solve that fully on-chain payment rail solution. Then things started converging. That was a big inflection point. So we had all this amazing technology. We had different chains, It was fast. We had amazing wallets that made a much better UX. We had stablecoins that were growing in popularity with tremendous growth. And then regulation started aligning. We had regulatory clarity coming out of the US, coming out of Europe, Africa. You know, we heard about South Africa as well, making some very good progress there. Asia as well. And it's very rare that things align like this. So those years were super important to provide the guidance, make things legal, give the stamp on, yes, this is fine, this is what is possible, but they didn't provide the how. You know, how do you make it happen in practice? How do you make payments real and crypto payments happen in everyday life? On the stablecoin side, that's $35 trillion in transfer volume. This is huge, actually bigger than Visa. This is incredible progress. With the better clarity on the regulatory side, we had again a problem to solve. How do we make a crypto-native payment rail? So what we needed is something that understands wallets, understands the decentralization nature of wallets, understands chains and tokens and gas, be fully crypto-native on the wallet side, something that makes the UX, the user experience, easy and intuitive enough. On the other hand, we need something that fits into the existing commerce, fits into the point-of-sale systems, fits into the online payment technology. Needs a rail that is compatible with wallets and compatible with merchants. A rail that doesn't ask anyone to change. That brings us to a new era in crypto payments. There's a missing layer that needs to be built, right? Wallet Connect Pay is that missing layer. Wallet Connect has been around for a while, since 2018, and it can understand wallets, and it can understand the complexity of commerce. What we need for payments to be successful, we need a global solution. We can have local solutions, there's a lot out there, but eventually people move around, there's blockchains, technology that's global. So what we need scale. And what Wallet Connect provides that. So as I said, since 2018, Wallet Connect has been around, powering hundreds of wallets that represent hundreds of millions of users to be able to connect to the DeFi space. We had last year $400 billion in volume transferred on the Wallet Connect network. So while Wallet Connect Pay is a new payment rail, it doesn't start from scratch. It starts with all that ecosystem that's ready to unlock payments. What's also missing on the merchant side, where we want to connect to their world without, well, abstracting complexity, is the point-of-sale world. So Wallet Connect is partnering with Ingenico. Ingenico is one of the top global providers of payment terminals worldwide. 40 million terminals deployed. If you pay with cards anywhere, there's a big chance that you've used an Ingenico terminal. What Ingenico provides is that abstraction layer. Merchants don't have to change their hardware. They don't have to change their processes. They don't have to understand crypto if they don't want to. They can plug in and be able to unlock all the value sitting in the wallets. So when Ingenico is serious about stablecoins and payments, that's where we get to the production-grade infrastructure for payments. from a user experience, from a wallet experience, from a merchant experience point of view, things need to be simple. You need to be able to have your wallet with your crypto stored in your wallet. You scan a QR code, you confirm the payment, and you're done in seconds. On the merchant side, they don't need to change their processes. They use the same hardware. They enjoy, but they enjoy the promise of that new technology. What it means for them is faster settlements, lower fees. And when this aligns, this creates value for everyone. From a user point of view, you're not locked in. You enjoy your self-custody in your various wallets. And that's one of the important points, is that Wallet Connect is not here to lock people in. This is a crypto-based payment rail compatible with the wallets out there. On the wallet side, it also brings the right incentives and the right economics. While on the card side, wallets lose out on the UX, they lose out on the control. With a crypto-native payment rail, wallets stay in control. You build better UX, better experiences. What wallets get out of it as well, they get economic incentives. They get part of the fees that are flowing into the system. And on the merchant side, they unlock all that value that's sitting on chain. There's a huge amount of stablecoins stay sitting in wallets, and despite the good growth on the card side, there's still a very low amount of people spending their crypto. So the merchant side unlock all that demand. They enjoy faster settlements. They don't have to wait days and weeks sometime to get their money. They get it instantly. And while being able to pay their staff in fiat if they wish to. So 10 years later, with all this progress, we can finally have crypto payments that meet real-life demands. Thank you.
Would anybody from the crowd have any questions, comments? There we go.
Okay, hello. I appreciate the fact that this is an abstraction that makes it very simple for anybody, regardless of their understanding of the technology, to participate in the commerce of transacting, buying and selling. And I'm curious, for the people that are more privacy conscious, those that have hardware wallets, say for example, will they also be able to participate, or is it exclusive to specific e-commerce applications?
Yeah, great question. So we want to include everyone. It has to be a global solution, has to be something that anyone can use, and it has something that there's a transparency part of blockchains, but with payments, we need to have that privacy part as well. So yes, it is compatible with hardware wallets. Most of the hardware wallets would have, an equivalent mobile application. From a privacy point of view, there's part of things that's part of the roadmap, is that how do you make it that those payments can't be fully traced back to the user. From a merchant point of view, merchants don't want all their sales transparently displayed online, right? So as part of those payment rails, we need to, and that's an amazing technology that's available, to be able to make it traceable if needs to, but from a publicized blockchain point of view, it has to appear that's obfuscated in some ways.
Thank you very much. I'm a big fan of Luno as well. Thanks to the Zappa integration, I'll be able to pay my parking ticket with the app.
Absolutely.
Okay, hi, my name is Panti. So in regards of the Wallet Connect, does the company itself that runs it collect any user telemetry in terms of what they purchase and so on?
It will be on-chain payments. So those transactions are, on the blockchain transparently. From a data privacy, data collection point of view, the whole flow is decentralized. It's using self-custody wallets, but the main point of payment rails that fit into the real world, it has to be regulated. And the regulations tell us that we need to capture some information. It's not a KYC, it's not extensive KYC, but based on the regions, obviously this is a global system, but payments are very local and regional, depending on the amounts that you spend, depending on where you are. But there is, in Europe, for example, we need to collect some minimum amount of information as part of the travel rule regulations. So regulators they know they can trace the transactions, they just want to be able to attach a name to that payment. Which, when you pay with cards, that's exactly what happens, right? I mean, if you want a bank account, you need to get KYC. The information is that money moving is really mapped to your identity. On the blockchain side, self-custodial wallet point of view, it's actually more open. Anyone can open a wallet, can have a wallet, a self-custodial wallet. They can receive money into it from where all around the world. So it's open to everyone, no KYC required. But if you want to do a payment via the regulated payment rail, there's some information that's captured.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, how are you? I love the fact that you said that it's chain agnostic. There's two questions I want to ask. In terms of the developer side, like, are there APIs and are they pre-built SDKs where we can springboard off? And also the card and the POS, is it just a POS system, or does it come like with the card and the POS where devs can play around with things and see what works?
Yeah, that's a great question. How do you guys get involved? And there's multiple touch points. So if we start from the wallet end user point of view, if you're building a wallet, a self-custodial wallet, or if you're building a neobank, anything where value and money is stored, obviously it has to have a link to crypto. But a lot of neobanks coming in and saying, yes, we give you a bank account plus we give you a crypto account. That's going to be more and more mainstream over time. So if you're building a wallet, building a neobank, you can use our SDKs that has been around for since 2018. Those SDKs actually allow you to connect to dApps in the same way they'll be able to recognize that QR code. That QR code will have all the information, how much you need to spend, what is the merchant, who's the merchant, and that wallet will understand. So from a developer point of view, you integrate the SDK, and here you go, it works. From a POS point of view, this is now our partnership with the point of sale manufacturers. It is hard to go out one merchant to another merchant at a time. This is not scalable. The payments have been around for a long time now, so there's big players that have an ownership of those devices. Wallet Connect doesn't build, we're not providing our own devices. We are partnering with the ecosystem partners. So Ingenico is one of the top manufacturers of point of sale devices. And they're saying, we are seeing a lot of demands from merchants that want to be able to accept stablecoins coming from their customers. So they're coming in, and then we're going to deploy our SDK technology onto the hardware as part of it. So if you work on point of sale devices or hardware, definitely there's an opportunity there as well. And if you work in e-commerce, that works in store, but also works online. If you build an e-commerce website, you can have that technology on your e-commerce as well.
Thanks. Are these tools available right now? Or?
They're available right now. walletconnect.com/pay. You have all the information there.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay, so you answered part of my question with how does Ingenico manage how does it reduce the friction from the customer and the merchant, so the SDKs on the POS device. My next or follow-up question would be, how do you manage the risk of the user and the merchant with new regulations now, with knowing your customer and knowing the transaction? Where does that risk lie now?
And what kind of risk are you thinking about?
I think it's with the new regulation, so if, especially e-commerce, more so than in person, where of a certain amount of transactions, it might flag certain things. And historically, blockchain payments were quite decentralized, so you really didn't know who. I know there are players like Chain Analysis and SumSub who is like in the space, but in this Wallet Pay and Ingenico, where does that risk kind of lay or lie?
Yeah, 100%. So again, this is a regulated business. It's a regulated payment, so it's making crypto fit into the payment system. So making crypto regulated. That's why it's such an interesting interaction between the two worlds. So as you make your transaction, in some jurisdiction, we collect a bit of information, but beyond that, your address is then screened against sanctions list, analyzed with tools like Chainalysis, and yeah, you may be denied. So that's sort of the power of on-chain technology, is that there is intelligence that's available, and yes, your transaction will be screened and has to be compliant in a way.
Okay, thank you. My name is Doreen. That was great, and maybe we're trying to make like crypto be used in a daily basis globally. And one of the main things that worries most of the users is suppose a transaction is being made, and the way you've said, there is a little information about that transaction that is being kept. How do you convince someone who is new to crypto and someone who doesn't know about it that the information about that transaction is safe, and that's the way to go? Like, how do you manage to convince someone about it?
Yeah, great question. So there are different players in the space. So if a bank or a neobank integrates Wallet Connect, you already been KYC'd. They know about you, so you won't have to. They'll share that information with the Wallet Connect Pay network. If you come from a fully self-custodial wallet where no one knows who you are, we'll collect that information. There's a privacy policy. It's compliantly stored on a server, so that's going to be, as a user, you'll have that information on what you can do. You've got the right to delete, the right to edit. It's GDPR compliant, so that's part of the flow.
Thank you.
I think one of the famous drawbacks of cryptocurrency is, how can I put this? How easy it is to lose your wealth. If you mistype an address, it goes to the wrong address. There's no way to recover the value that you've just mistakenly transferred. With Wallet, I think it was Wallet Connect, is there a way to maybe undo mistaken transactions, or is there safety policies in place in case people are being scammed?
Yes, I mean, scam is a big problem. I think there's a level of security that's happening because the point of sale devices are controlled. That QR code will have all the information. So from a wallet perspective, you'll scan that, and that address will be encoded in there. So there's a limited amount of risk there. Obviously, QR codes can have some risk. You shouldn't really scan any random QR code and send money there. But if it's a controlled environment with the merchant, it definitely reduces the risk at that point. From a scamming point of view, how do you get your money back? This is our hard point. Those are more, again, it has to be controlled as part of the flow. Make sure that QR code is 100% solid, and make sure that your wallet that you use is the right wallet to scan it.
Thank you. Does the wallet that you guys run have, what is it called now? Like the verification application where you don't have to put a password, passkeys, that's the word I'm looking for. Do you guys have native passkeys embedded into your guys' website, basically?
Yeah, a great question. So Wallet Connect doesn't build wallets. And as part of the history of the company, we try to just facilitate and unlock potential. So, and partner with all the ecosystem. So when I mentioned 700 plus wallets, those are not our wallets. Those are the MetaMask of the world, the Binance wallet, the Trust wallet, the SafePay wallet. There's like tons of wallets out there, which is great because there's lots of innovation in wallets. But those wallets will have every one of them, each of them have a different way to manage your coins. We're not responsible for that. That's the wallet side of things.
Okay, thank you.
Hi. I'm curious about, you're talking a lot about point of sale stuff, and I'm wondering whether like remittance and cross-border payments are thought of as part of the same thing. And then I'm thinking about last year when Signal said that they were maybe going to have to leave Europe because of chat scanning and kind of encryption backdoor requirements. And I'm wondering, are there any hard lines for when you would like decide not to operate in a particular country or region because of the regulation compliance, you need to, they ask you something that you're not willing to do for compromising privacy or security.
Okay, so there's two questions. One is the cross-country border payments, remittance. So what we're seeing as part of those $400 billion that's moving on the Wallet Connect network, and that's not representative of the whole, there's much more happening, is that those payments already happen, right? At the big level, if you're moving billions of dollars, you can have a team that's crypto expert, that have wallets, that have their coins secured with custodians like Fireblocks and other big ones. So those flows already happen. What Wallet Connect Pay is really about unlocking the retail commerce. Now, is there anything that we would not be comfortable with from a regulatory point of view? No. It has to be compliant. We have to abide with the regulation. So it's all of us to, if we're not happy with it, it's for us to push, right? South Africa is building the next generation of regulatory frameworks. Do we want dollar to be accepted globally, or do we want local stablecoins? Do we want a full KYC for payments in South Africa or in any countries, or we don't want that? So there's going to be, again, we want a global system, but all those regional intricacies are super important. And it's up to us to shape that. So the Wallet Connect Pay rails will be fully compliant. But that's, hopefully there's a level of understanding that it has to be seamless, has to be easy. We don't want to add too much friction. And we need to make it better than cards.
Thank you all for your wonderful comments and questions. Ladies and gentlemen, oh wait, we've got one more.
Hi, sorry, I've just been thinking about things at the moment. So Wallet Connect Pay, right? Do you guys settle in fiat?
Yes, I mean, that's part of the plugging in into the real commerce. The merchants doesn't want crypto, or they may want it. They're excited about stablecoins, but stablecoins is just interesting and a potential, but it's like, at the moment, it's still, most merchants would say fiat. That's where I pay my staff, or I pay my goods. Yeah.
Yeah. So we run Bitcars.eu, and basically BitBrands as a company, and a lot of the challenges that we're facing is with that offboarding process. On-ramping seems to be solved quite quickly, but off-ramping seems to be there's a lot of regulation. The travel rules keep changing constantly. GDPR is fluctuating, and being able to offboard and settle a merchant. There's one thing to advertise that settlement is instant, but there's still a delay in conversion from the crypto rail to the fiat rail, and then managing the regulation around KYB and KYC and AML. And that's kind of where we seem to have a lot of friction is in that space.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's what we want to be good at, is to be able to off-ramp, but considering all the complexity across regions. But yes, merchants will get fiat if they want to, so they'll have to get register their bank account and be able to comply to the local regulation.
Ladies and gentlemen, please give Fab Trebitowski
Thanks, guys.
a
Thank you.
round of applause. Okay, guys, so we're going to take our first break. Thank you so much. We're going to get started here at 11:35, so we've got about 5 minutes. So run, hit the bathroom, go grab a coffee. If you were here early enough to get one of our cards, grab a pastry, and we will be back with you shortly. Alrighty, guys. If you're down there grabbing coffee, wrap that up. If you're finishing a pastry, wrap that up. We're gonna get started in a couple minutes. So come on up, grab your seats. Give you guys a couple minutes for us to get started. Hey, registration team, just a quick call out. Can we go and start to bring our attendees back up to our seats? We are ready to get started. Okay, guys, second call, please return to your seats. We are about to get started. We have the wonderful Christina Yassini who will be speaking with us shortly. So go on, wrap up your conversations. Let's bring it back to the stage and let's get started. Hey, this is a quick call to our registration team downstairs. Registration team, can you please start to bring our guests back to the front stage? We're about to get started. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, last call before we get started. Please, can we have everyone return to your seats? We are about to get started.
London town, rays, purple haze, in his brain, fucked up.
Okay, last call. Registration team, can you please wrap up any last wranglers? We're about to get started up here. Thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I would like for you guys all to give a round of applause to our next speaker. We have UCT's very own Christina Yassini, and she's going to be talking about Signal as Currency, designing decentralized infrastructure for network capacity growth. Yes, we're continuing on this theme of how to scale. Christina, welcome to the stage.
Good morning, everyone. How are we doing? Doing well, awesome. So before I jump in, I would just like to set a scene that we're all probably familiar with in some capacity. We've gone through this whether we were younger, older, but we have a memory of this. So imagine you're in a kitchen, you're prepping a meal, you're so excited, you found the recipe on TikTok, and for some reason, you reach for the salt and you realize that you're out of salt. So cool, you're like, you know what, I just need a bit of salt. You hop on over next door, you knock on your neighbor's door, and you say, hey, can I have some salt? And they are more than happy to give you a pinch. You head back in, you continue with your meal. And so we think of this as a very simple act. It is a simple protocol of immediacy. There isn't a transaction that backs this. There isn't a need for an intermediary or verification. There is that embedded trust in how you're operating, and you're able to link rather to the person that is immediately next to you. Oh, sorry. Okay, awesome. So when we look at the decade that we're in currently, there is a need for that protocol, the need to connect to the people that are next to us in order to solve the problems that we face on the African continent. Because if there's one thing that we understand is that the problems we face are contextually variable. So what is the case in West Africa may not be the case in East Africa, and so on in the South. And also the resources that are available to us are also very dependent on what is available. So as we navigate the third decade of the 21st century, Africa stands at the precipice of a new economic epoch, where we can lean on those that are next to us in order to distribute resources and also to scale much faster. And the ability that is able to fuel this is connectivity, not having to go much further, but just to simply connect with those that are immediately available as a prerequisite for participation in the global marketplace. And when we think of the systems that allow us to do that, we have to think of how we ended up in this position, the failures of the centralized model and the capacities or the inadequacies of those capacities, right? So sub-Saharan Africa bears the heaviest burden of the global digital divide. We have infrastructure, but we also need to be aware that the context of the African continent mean that we have rural citizens that we have to reach. And so existing infrastructure developers do not or cannot justify the economic cost of building infrastructure to access those areas. And so you see that there is a gap where 1 gigabyte of data in our region averages about 3.9% of the monthly income, which is much higher than the global standard for these costs. So you see that if one of the poorest and developing regions in the world is being charged the most, we have to look at the systems that are in place in driving that accessibility and question how they are designed and whether the models that we've been following so far have been inadequate, right? We have over 700 million people that live under the footprint of a mobile broadband network, which means that the infrastructure is there, but for them to access it is another question. And that is something that we have to target as we build solutions. So I'm well aware that in this room are mainly developers, people that are building solutions for the African continent from the African continent, well aware of the situations that plague us and also the resources that are available to us. Awesome. So one context that I think is pretty big on the African continent when it comes to innovation and development is Nigeria. They have a population of over 200 million people, but somehow only over 100 million of those people have mobile internet subscriptions, which means that the infrastructure is there, but it is not feasible or reflected on the ground. So we question then the meaningful connectivity layer in the African continent. Somehow we're building, somehow over the years we are developing and we are expanding, and there is a cost that we are able to see, and we're developing and innovating on policies to make that development much more scalable, yet the meaningful connectivity on the ground is where the question is. So there's a need now to invest in more fiber optic cables, which has been the strategy employed for the past 10, 20, 15 years. And so we're seeing that the centralized model, where one sort of main conglomerate comes in, develops the infrastructure, and distributes it, is still very much so limited. In the case of Ethiopia, Ethiopia has a booming telecommunications infrastructure, and recently they have been introducing policies to innovate and develop in that space. And they're looking towards incentivizing rapid community-led development. And the main problem in that sector is because over 70% of the population, it does not have internet connection or mobile subscriptions, which shows you that we've come quite far in Africa, but the gap is still large, especially when we compare the complexities of rural and urban settlements and also the trajectory that we hope to see for ourselves. Another example is that of Kenya, with approximately 35 million people that lack access to mobile internet connection. There are policy developments that are in place to prioritize digital technology, to reach more people and connect more, yet somehow we are still failing to recognize that there is still a large gap that needs to be addressed. Yeah. Sorry. And so we have to think, what would the solution look like? So if we've been able to establish that a centralized model is not working, or the effects of it are very limited in how it can reach others, the call therefore is for a decentralized approach. And for that, I would like to propose decentralized physical infrastructure networks as the solution of expanding that capacity in terms of its interoperability capabilities. For example, if we look at World Mobile in East Africa, what they have done is they've equipped the local individuals in communities with what is known as an air node. And through this, they are incentivized with tokens to connect to internet and also to monitor the traffic. This creates a distributed scale where the burden of economic investment is distributed between the operators themselves and the organizations and also the end user. Whereas another example we have is QuickPick. QuickPick saw that a big problem in Africa is infrastructure and distribution. And so they developed an African logistics solution that views delivery as a service on Deepin. And basically what this does is it is embedded on the Hedera consensus service, where the tokens are managed in that way, where a driver can be tracked accordingly, and every turn, every stop, every turn, every stop, it can be confirmed and verified on the system. So in order for us to see these strategies in action, we need to establish market integrity. One of the questions, or the biggest questions we have on the African continent is transparency and trust, and also most importantly, verification. But we can see that Africa is on the global stage, where in the 2021 Global Crypto Adoption Index Top 20 list, we had countries like South Africa, Tanzania, Nigeria, and Ghana, but to name a few. And which shows that of the cryptocurrencies that were registered that year, even though Africa only accounted for 2%, that 2% was valued at over $100 billion. And that shows that the demand is there, the growth is there, because at the core of what Africa does is trade and exchange. And there are also immense opportunities for this through the adoption of Web3. So you see that Web3 has entered at a perfect point for developers to build on these technologies and to lean on them for verification and trust. If we look at the fundamental element of community in Africa, there is that inherent trust. For the immediacy protocol to be valid, you need to trust the person that you're asking and also the one that is providing whatever resource that is required. And if we think of infrastructure, there is that awareness that a lot of the trust is broken. And so when the big conglomerates are struggling and there are areas that are not addressed, there is a need to be filled by the lower level developers that are closest to the problem and that face the problem every single day. And so then we see that the texture of this integrity varies by region. In South Africa, for example, we see increased development in the use of AI and machine learning technologies. And this is from an educational standpoint and someone who works in computational research, but also in the field. So as we develop these systems and to fit the African context, we understand that the algorithms need to be designed to reflect the systems in which they work in. And that is what is most important. And this is one of the ways we are improving our economic positionality. As we can see, Africa is continuing to occupy space in the global stage, and there is a greater need to simplify the complexity of this Web3 to the point where it is embedded in the institutions that we function on and lean on the most, but also the institutions that cause a lot of the difficulties in the way we operate. So one of those being banking, some of those being in the energy sector, some of those being connection resources on a digital and large scale. So there is a need for technologies that are pioneered by artificial intelligence. And one of those, or some area of those, is Artificial Superintelligence Alliance, where they are building artificial intelligence to be used on the blockchain networks as a method to verify the system and also to learn from the data as it develops. And one of the ways this is being done is not only through large language models, but also multi-agent large language models that feed into this decentralization principle, right? Where they can be distributed largely at scale, aware of the geographical context, feeding into them, developing from them, and also coming up with solutions or supporting the developers in those space, allowing us to move from prediction towards agency, right? And this is in sectors all over the world. And so what this does for developers, and I think most importantly for you guys as you work on building these solutions, to think of the new equation that has come up, the new development equation, where you understand that not only are you playing at a global scale, but you're also playing at a context that is very much variable to you, with the resources that are available to you, and the needs of those resources. And those will be what fuel the next steps. So as we can see that the future, there is a lot of investment in this space. A lot of investment is coming internationally, but we also see governments and private entities as well working towards supporting the development of infrastructure in the continent. And so we see that the network of 2035 looks fundamentally different. When we understand the difficulties that faced the continent 10, 15, 20 years ago, it is different to what we face today. And also the resources that are available as well. Autonomous agents, generative optimization, and self-healing protocols allow us to build systems that are very much so dynamic and also are aware of the context and not just driven by foreign economic pressures. And this also provides developers with toolkits to rework how infrastructure is deployed, how it is managed, and also how it is optimized. And skipped one. Oh, yeah, that's it. But before I close, I just want to anchor my point in saying that as we build and develop more resources, there is a need to be aware of the context that we're in and leaning on the person that is immediately next to us to help build those contexts and take them back to the context in which we exist, to expand the capacities and also to drive that change even further. And if you would like to discuss more on this, I am more than happy to, as someone who works in research and coming up with toolkits or the algorithms that we build to develop in this space to support the African context. I'm more than happy to connect on LinkedIn. Thank you.
Wow, what a powerful and inspirational talk. I would like to open up the floor for questions, comments from the audience. When you're speaking, can you hold the mic up to your mouth, please?
Thank you so much for the engaging talk. I wanted to find out obviously you're a researcher, you have to take accountability for everything that you look out for and that sort of thing. But how can the everyday person, how can they take initiative for these kinds of issues that you've mentioned all over Africa, obviously, and infrastructure issues and how can the everyday person sort of take responsibility or show up or sort of have a voice around those sort of limitations that are standing in their way of expansion when it comes to this industry or
I think that is a very pertinent area of focus for us as well, because we understand that the distribution of resource to those areas where it is lacking is one area of complexity, but also the awareness of the methods that are available to fix the issues that we face is another. And so I think the biggest driver is to embed them in existing systems. So for example, if we have a community that focuses on elderly education or something, to allow or to redesign rather blockchain technologies, embedding them in those systems so that not only are they learning from them, but the code and the systems are functioning for them for that purpose. So I think purposeful awareness of the context is the biggest thing. And so one thing that we try to get developers to be aware of is to design systems that are aware of the end user at the end of the day, and not just to have that agency, but to be a supportive piece as we develop and continue. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. I also wanted to know, because obviously you have mentioned awareness, and it sort of is like all our responsibility to kind of push awareness. And you're a researcher, obviously, so where would you direct us to get certain resources, to be able to articulate that information in, I guess, a more informed way?
And one key area I would mention are fellowships. So there are a number of research fellowships in the continent that help to develop researchers in that space and also to equip you with the technical skills to be able to build. So for example, I'm thinking We Think Code is another one of those examples. Then there are so many on the continent as well, where you're learning the technical skills from the people that are closest to the problem, therefore positioning you there in that space as well. At the University of Cape Town as well, we have resources and training programs and classes for the general public, and an online resource service as well that you can find on the main UCT website to direct people for connecting to that space, and also to, but you can more than welcome to email me and I can send you an entire list.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Hi. I love the focus on the African continent, and in my previous experience, what I've noticed is that M-Pesa and USSD has a chokehold for the rest of the African continent, right? So when you want to incentivize emerging technologies, at the moment there's a lot of focus on smartphones and smartphone capability, but as we know, a lot of the unbanked community are entrenched in dumb phones and the USSD channel. Yeah, there's no feature phones, right? So one of the challenges in a previous life that we struggled with is to increase that adoption to the smartphone community, but there was quite large resistance from the mobile providers because they are incentivized to keep their customer base unbanked and on the USSD channel. So what is the mechanism to incentivize those channels or those partners to switch from USSD and get the unbanked banked, and then still embark on what would be a pretty large educational campaign to get your auntie, your granny, whatever else, to switch from pressing 1, 2, and 3 now to going, okay, cool, this is blockchain technology, and I can now send my sister in the UK a couple of Ethereum. Like that seems quite like a large gap with such a lot of regulational issues, and the corruption on the USSD side is just like off the chart. So how would you go about incentivizing those changes, those systemic changes?
I think one of the biggest things is the digitization of the informal sector, especially when we look at the African continent. So that is a large area of focus when we think of developing a lot of the unbanked, like you said, and USSD focus areas onto blockchain and digital, especially when there isn't the ready digital space. And I think the biggest driver would be to meet people where they are. It would be foolish of us to think that what works in the north or in the east can actively work here as well. So I think that that community understanding, to speak to people in their own language, and in a way it is about making it invisible, but it also making it like them. So I think it is a large educational campaign in that space, I must say. But I strongly believe in small drops of water that make a mighty ocean. It is about those little steps that we take from all sorts of ends to address this problem. And we can see that the bigger telecoms, of course, they have their own incentives. And so I strongly believe, and I've seen it for myself, that the developer ecosystem is being able to target those areas. And so I think we have to lean largely on the smaller developers in the space to be able to make an impact, over the long term. So, cool.
Christina, thank you so much for that inspiring chat. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a wonderful round of applause. Alrighty, guys, we are going to welcome our two new guests for a fireside chat. We've got Simon Dingle, founder of Invest Capital, and we've got Jordan Burge, representing CBVC. Gentlemen, please come to the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Are you kicking us off, Jordan?
I guess so. So, for those who don't know me, Jordan Burgess. I'm from CBVC. I'm an Accelerator Program Associate, joined here by Simon Dingle from Invest Capital and ZARP. But besides that, we're speaking about funding pathways for early stage teams across grants, venture capital, and ICOs. So, I guess grants, starting off with that. I guess Simon and I have had our fair experiences with grants in the ecosystem, but you know, it's quite interesting how the grant ecosystem has relatively changed across the couple of years. You know, back in the day it was like, oh cool, I have an idea. You know, here's $5,000 to $50,000 just to build it so we have on-chain activity for the early stage days. Now, it's relatively so much different to the relative point where you have milestones integration, hybrid models of a combination of investments and standardized grants. Yes, of course, it depends on chain. And then, sad to say, but a lot of chains on the grant model are also just farming that said builder. But Simon, I know you have a lot to say about that topic, so I'm going to kick it to you and continue after that.
So I mean, I largely agree with everything that Jordan just said.
I think that there are a lot of traps that you can fall into on the funding side, and these are mistakes that I made as a founder and in previous businesses, both here and in Europe. And I think it's important to be aware of those traps. So this isn't a negative thing. Obviously, there's a lot of positive gains that one can get from grant funding. Fantastic support from the right organizations, much needed startup capital, networks that can be unlocked to get you up and running with the right partners. It's not all doom and gloom, but you have to be aware of the agendas behind the grants sometimes. So for example, there are a lot of L2s on Ethereum that'll give you a grant to build on their chain. But the terms of the grant is that you're not allowed to build on other chains. So you might get some money, and that sounds great, and you can start paying the bills and building what you want, but now you're deploying on some crappy L2 that nobody's using. It's a ghost chain, and you're locked into that L2. So you've compromised your business. Yes, you've got funding, but now you're building a product from the wrong prerogative. So I think, to me, the big thing is to be true to yourself. You've got an idea, you've got a passion, you know that this is the right thing to do, and ask yourself if the people behind the grant you're receiving are aligned with that strategy. If you think their L2 is going to, be the Ethereum L2, then yeah, sure, take the grant, deploy on the L2 and maybe lock into it. There might be benefits to that. But be very aware that nobody's giving you a grant because they love you or they love your business. Grants come from foundations and from teams that have an agenda and use grants to further that agenda. So I guess that's my kind of high-level thinking on it.
No, oh, there we go. I honestly completely agree with you. And it's not every chain relatively out there in the ecosystem. It's also a method of needing to play it very strategically. So as you're building your startup or company, nowadays grants is a great method to actually create validation. If a company or this said foundation is after you to wanting to deploy a capital towards you in grant form, if you align, do take it, because that communicates quite early well to an early stage investors that see like, okay, a foundation is willing to spend $50,000 on you from the get-go, saying like this brings value on chain, so it might have venture value. But outside of that, one of the concepts that I've seen so many founders do, and a prime example of that is, for instance, Berachain. I love Berachain, but they raised over $100 million, had a $3 billion valuation, and people went nuts. Like everywhere when it went, it was Bula on the Bera, and I'm like, awesome, okay, cool. And it got to the point where I saw startup founders essentially tying the entire company brand around the Berachain ecosystem. And you might think like, oh, they must have cut that individual a great deal. No, they just essentially truly believed in it, and now they're tied for that brand forever. So you might think like, okay, maybe that person believes in the chain. No, most of them essentially believed in the capital gain that chain could bring. Now they're going out there and wanting to raise venture capital, and the venture capitalists have their own personal biases correlated to chains as well. You're like, okay, great, Berachain TVL is down. Why do I want to invest into something that's correlated to a bear while we're in the bear market? It doesn't relatively make sense. So, for instance, you need to play this very strategically. Yes, there's roadmaps. Some grants actually or foundations have essentially tend to go through a very hybrid model approach where they might start you off with a grant and then actually invest into you directly. And if you can essentially facilitate that, that would be my highest recommendation for you. Because once you essentially get an investment from a foundation, they see you as an investment and they're more willing for you to essentially actually go out, build on other chains on the early stage days, and essentially align this with a method of saying this is a business proposal to essentially help your capital grow further. But yeah, Simon, I don't know if you have anything else to add on that.
No, I mean, just listening to you speaking, I guess something that came to mind for me is a useful way to think about it is when you take funding, whether it's a grant or whether it's from a VC fund or whoever you're taking money from, private equity, even friends and family who are helping you start up, it's not money you're getting, it's a partnership. And you need to think about if you want to be in that partnership. Because people do silly things when they need money. When there's money on the table and somebody's going, here's $50,000, sign this, and the money's yours, you need to catch yourself, because it's so easy to just go, well, I really need the money and sign these terms. But, you know, money doesn't come for free. These people are going to want to be on your board. They're going to want you to come and attend their workshops and get involved in their networks and deploy on their chains. There's a reason that they're giving you the money again. And so you really do need to think about whether or not this is somebody you want on your board. Because I've made the mistake, and I've seen so many friends make the mistake of taking money from the wrong people. And those people actually being the death of their business 5 years down the road, because they start throwing their weight around. In the case of VCs, many of them have been to business school and never run their own business, so you're going to get the worst advice of your life from them as well, and then they're going to insist on it. At the worst case scenario, they might even be the chairman of your board. So you really need to think about who you're taking the money from and whether or not that's somebody who you want to be parting with, because they might be a serious detriment to your business. The other thing I've seen happening, and this is a mutual friend of ours actually, a few years ago, won a grant from a VC fund to develop a new platform that was being built, and it was a $50,000 grant. The moment they won the competition, very excited, and unpacked it, it turned out it wasn't actually money, it was $50,000 worth of value, right? Mentorship, coaching, all of the things they don't need. And she's like, bitch, I need money, not, like, I thank you for your mentorship but this is not the $50,000 that I was promised to get my business up and running. And the other thing that comes with a lot of those arrangements is they're going to waste your time, right? It's like you get $50,000 of value and maybe $10,000 in the bank, and now you need to come and attend this workshop all day. You need to get involved with this thing that we're doing next week, and you've got all these milestones you need to reach. And so now you're spending your time doing all the things, completing somebody else's to-do list instead of building your business, right? So not only are they not helping your business, they're actually making your business worse by getting you involved in theirs. And so, that might not go down well with everybody in the room, but I think that's very important for young founders to understand, is that it's not about the money, it's about who the money's coming from and whether or not your interests are aligned with theirs.
No, I completely agree. Like, as I said, and I think, Simon, you would agree, a grant is something you should always play strategically as a relative stepping stone. If they tell you to jump, just don't jump. Like, that is the biggest thing. Never essentially sacrifice your identity and what you want to work for to essentially appease the people that is essentially giving you capital relatively for free in this case. But I guess that leads to a pretty good segue. Venture capitalists, people that aren't really giving money for free. So, for those who heard the first part, I'm at CVVC, so we're a venture capital firm in the heart of Crypto Valley. So we essentially deal with a plethora of startup founders through our accelerators and direct investments. So generally speaking, we have two funds, as well as our in-house accelerator, as well as our partner-based accelerators. We work with various protocols like Cardano, Lisk. We've done some things with Cosmos in the past. But essentially, we'll sign, for instance, a $150,000 check into you directly and give you that relative mental support. And then on the direct investment sides, for instance, our check sizes is in that realm of $150,000 to $500,000, where we mainly focus on seed, pre-seed, and that early stage Series A. But there is a lot of mistakes I see on a day-to-day basis when being approached by startup founders, as well as working with them very, very closely through accelerators. Is the biggest thing I've always seen is relatively not understanding the approach or the thesis around the fund or the VC. I've seen essentially pre-seed startups reach out to us regarding our Global Africa fund. Yes, they're building in Africa, and for context, if you guys do fall in that realm, do reach out. It's a $20 million micro fund that was actually led by Circle, so we're going to be deploying capital relatively soon. But we essentially get pre-seed companies wanting to reach out and not essentially aligning with the thesis of what we're looking for. And that creates brand damaging reputations, like across the board. Because you're essentially sitting here relatively wasting your time, you're wasting our time, and you're wasting other VCs' time. And I know saying that sitting in Africa, we don't have a plethora of VCs running around deploying capital in Africa, but I would honestly say never get discouraged by that fact. So for context, for those who don't know, Africa actually had the highest deal flow per capita, but we received the less amount of money. But I think I've said enough for now, so I'm going to leave it to you.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to think about when it comes to that sort of next level of funding. I mean, the first thing I'll say is, if you need to do anything you can, this is my opinion, to not have to raise money, right? Like, this is not something you do unless you absolutely have to do it. Because again, you're giving away equity, you're getting other people on board who might not have interests aligned with yours, et cetera, et cetera. Like, you don't raise money unless you absolutely have to, or unless you can and you don't need it, but it's just going to land in your lap for free. And then you're usually at like a Series A or a Series B at that point anyway. So that's the one thing I'll say. And then, you know, to your point about there not being a plethora of VCs in South Africa or in Africa, there are a lot of firms, especially in South Africa, that look like VCs and smell like VCs, but are not VCs. They're actually private equity players for the most part. And private equity comes with a very different mentality, a very different investment thesis. And so one needs to be very careful of that. There's nothing wrong with private equity money, but the expectations that come with it, in my experience, are fundamentally different, right? And it's all in the name. Like venture capitalists, that venture thing is very important. Private equity players are just capitalists. There's no venture. They got the money, but they like have no sense of adventure. And so they're more risk averse. They want to see their money come back sooner instead of investing in multiples like proper VCs do. They just have a fundamentally different mindset. And that's okay. But you need to understand that mindset if you're going to party with them, because it's a very different way of approaching your business. They don't understand hockey sticks. They don't understand running at a loss for 5 years and reinvesting in your product. Private equity players don't get that. So interrogate what looks like a VC fund in South Africa before actually playing with them, because it might just be private equity dressed up as VC, and that's going to be a very different deal. I guess the other thing that we've had to think about a lot, funding businesses in South Africa, is there are a lot of economic idiosyncrasies that make South Africa an interesting investment case. One of them obviously being foreign exchange control. So we speak to a lot of international investors that hypothetically want to invest in South African startups. They're super excited about Web3. They're super excited about South Africa. They like the fact that we got a low cost base, mad skills, it all checks out. But then when they actually look at what it means to invest in South Africa and how the IP potentially gets locked here, if you sell IP out of South Africa, it has to be sold wholesale. You can't keep an interest in that. Getting dividends out of the country can be difficult. And I've seen so many deals go south, literally, or not go south, because they're like, ooh, this foreign exchange control thing, can't get our heads around that. And so the antidote to that, unfortunately for our local economy, is a lot of young founders will go and establish their businesses outside of South Africa as a South African. And there are a lot of traps in that as well, because then you become a foreign-controlled company, etc. But if you can do it credibly, I see a lot of young founders in South Africa establishing businesses in places like the UK or ADGM, Abu Dhabi, places where A, the regulation is friendlier, B, you don't have foreign exchange control, and you've got a weight of investors that are used to playing in those territories and are quite happy to put money into those territories. But that, from a structural perspective, gets really gnarly really quickly. And it's so important to get the right advice up front and make sure that you're putting a structure in place that can ingest funding once you find it. Because what you don't want to do, in my experience, VCs don't have a lot in common, but one thing I've heard in every single intro meeting I've had with every single VC I've spoken to is they all tell you they can move fast.
Yeah.
It's like this weird thing that it's like, the way that you get 5G from the vaccine. Or the moment you become a VC, you just you think you can move fast. And in my experience, move fast in VC land is 6 months. That's the quickest I've seen anything go from deal to from intro to money, has been 6 months. Generally, you're looking at 8 months to a year, right? So you need to be psychologically ready for that kind of journey to go, okay, if I'm starting to fundraise today, the most optimistic I can be is maybe money in 6 months, but more realistically, money in a year. And then what does the structure look like once that money hits? How is it going to get to the business? Or am I going to waste 6 months on a deal that's going to fall down at the last minute because my structure isn't right to take this money in? And so that's something that I didn't know what the hell I was doing when I started on this journey, but that's something I wish I knew back then.
No, I completely agree with you. You took the words out of my mouth, and I think before heading into, the last topic of the conversation, Simon brought up a very important point. So if you're looking to start a company, that amount of time when it comes to raising capital, it is not a time or quarterly process. It's an ongoing process. As a founder, you never ever stop raising. As Simon said, it can take 6 to 8 months. Great, you got one deal, but you need to essentially raise a $500,000 pre-seed. Oh, cool, I need to find 8 other investors where 4 of them might essentially fall through. But seeing that we're getting quite close to time, I think relatively taking it to ICOs, back to 2019 or whenever, basically. But the jokes aside on ICOs, it is a relative great way to actually raise capital in today's market. The only thing is how you play it. And for the love of God, don't do a token if you don't have actual utility behind it. Out of curiosity, I just kind of want to know, who here has heard of Chainlink and their Link token?
Sorry, what token?
Chainlink and a Link token. Cool. Who here has ever owned Chainlink or Link? Okay. Who here has actually used it for its utility purpose?
Do oracles count?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess there was 8 people or 10 people, and 3 people have actually used it in this room. So that's a prime example. Most people that said, I've owned it, was due to the fact of the monetization gain to it. And the thing is, when you're starting an ICO, you need to be prepared to say, hey, you're going to have 2 businesses, except in your case where your coin is your business. But so you're going to have 2 businesses. You're going to care about the people that actually cares about the operating utility of your company. And then you're going to have a secondary part that doesn't care if your business just IPO'd or did a Series D, which is very unprecedented. They're going to care, does the token price go up? They don't care about the founder. They only care about the monetization gain. And that's the thing I've seen so many founders essentially think of it so in a different way, where they're saying oh, this is going to bring so much traction, it's going to bring capital, it's going to bring users. It barely ever brings users. So my word of advice personally is when you essentially want to do an ICO, think of it strategically of a point of, can you actually put a real use case around this product that you already have, because you're about to essentially enter the process of starting a second company. So that's my relevant take on it. Simon, what do you think?
I mean, I broadly agree with you. I think there are a lot of interesting opportunities to raise money on chain, not necessarily call it an ICO, that are fine if there isn't a utility for the instruments that you're using, right? So, I mean, to me, it's okay to think of tokens as a substitute for equity in the on-chain world. To go, this token is basically shares in my company, but, there might be smarter ways to do it. You could raise in a stable coin like, USDC or USDT, and anybody who sends you funding in that coin could get an NFT, which is their share certificate that lives in their wallet. And if you want to distribute dividends to those people, it's very easy to programmatically do that to any of the NFT holders, etc. Now, a lot of this doesn't align with regulation. That's why it doesn't happen more. But there are a lot of interesting opportunities to me in raising money on chain that are perfectly credible. And I think issuing a token for the sole purpose of raising money is okay. I think you need to bear all of the things that Jordan said in mind if you're going to go down that road. But I think they're credible credible ways of doing that.
No, I do agree with you. There are credible ways, especially like utilizing a stable coin at the end of the day. But yet again, I want to leave you guys with a thought of essentially also be prepared for things like vesting schedules. That also relatively makes or breaks your raising process. Even if you're individual, like you go through this route where your token becomes the foundational part of your company, and you have let's say five people holding like $30 million of tokens and have a year-long vesting schedule.
Yeah.
What do you think is going to happen? Like, your company is going to go bankrupt. All that pressure and effort you've essentially set through will be relatively for nothing. But yet again, I do agree with you regarding to that point. There is stable methods. It's just extremely hard to do due to current market conditions. And I know you always say stable coins can be utilized for everything, and I do agree with you. So if you do need a token, like definitely utilize the stable coin.
I guess what I'd add is that your business is going to fundamentally change in the wake of an ICO in similar ways that private businesses change when they transition in the IPO to a public business. Whereas you've got the market that's now gaming the value of your company, right? It's a fundamentally different way of thinking about your business. And that's okay. You know, you can make way more money than you would have otherwise, as we know from public markets. But you have to think about that side of the business because it's a business in itself and it fundamentally changes the game. You know, you're going to have the cabal gaming your token, like Jordan was saying, and pushing the price up and down at their whims. And people seeing that as a proxy for the value in the business you've created, which is complete nonsense. But it's okay to play that game. Just understand the game before you play it. And be willing to take on, you know, all of that complexity and admin and hard work because it's going to add a lot of overhead to your business.
Couldn't say it better. But I think that's the end, and we should probably open it up for some Q&As. So, does anyone have any questions for us?
Check.
Hi. Thanks for this informative session. I'm curious about how you think about in your mental models of businesses, how you've seen in your experience, copyleft and like truly open and free software. Like if part of your business is something that it can't be intellectually private property.
Yeah. So as long as a revenue model surrounding it, because we've essentially left this realm of, in my personal opinion, the novelty factor of decentralization. In my honest opinion, and this is my hot take, I think decentralization is dead.
What?
Yeah. You know, we have multi-sig admin bases everywhere. Like a chain can essentially freeze a smart contract now if they want to. So the thing is, if that's a core part of your business model that's actually generating revenue, then yes, like for instance, outside of Web3, like look at Superbase, they're open source, and they're a very, very large respected company that's actually printing absolute dollar. So if it's a key operation of the business and there's a revenue return generated to it, yes, like definitely. So it's not a fact of, hey, we're completely doing this for free, but if there's relative layers or open source software where you don't relatively own it, that's more than fine.
So I guess I came to crypto from open source. Like I was working with Linux and open source before I was interested in the money side of things at all. I worked on the launch of Canonical and Ubuntu Linux. I worked with Go open source before then, and so that's really the world I came from. And I've got some pretty strong views about IP in the context of software and how it just makes absolutely no sense, especially because the IP laws that we apply to software were written 100 years before software was even a thing. But I guess I agree with everything Jordan said, but I'd add it also depends on how novel what you're trying to achieve is. Because it turns out most software isn't novel, it might have a novel application, but most of it is just copied and pasted from Stack Overflow and now GPT anyway. So like, good luck trying to make a case for that being, you know, novel IP. But if you do have something truly novel, like, you know, Larry Page did with PageRank, then definitely think about the rights to that and how you potentially guard it, or if you are going to apply an open source license, which one is it going to be? MIT, or is it, because there are a lot of idiosyncrasies there that do matter. So I'm a big proponent of open source and sharing. I think if you can replicate something, you shouldn't be allowed to sell it. But I'm the contrarian, clearly, because the world has gone in an opposite direction.
Testing, cool. I laughed at the 2019 ICO joke. ICO was reminiscent of like a couple of years back. For me personally, it feels like the blockchain and cryptocurrency sphere changed quite a bit. Back then, it felt a bit more novel. People were trying to build DAOs and how to leverage technology for everyday use. It seems now a lot of funding is coming from traditional finance. You see it's more blockchain than cryptocurrency. You see like a lot of the funding, Bitcoin, Ethereum, the existing players, that's getting the funding and they're going up. And everything else is almost meme-like, meme coins, where you get this sharp spikes. Do you see that ICOs as a realistic way to really get funding, especially because it doesn't feel like blockchain cryptocurrency as a direct product because of the cool tech behind it is viable? It's almost like blockchain is this backbone that traditional finance like Visa and MasterCard and the banks are trying to get on top of, and there's a market, but it almost feels like it's the big boys using this side. How does the smaller guys kind of get a shot at using the technology, other than maybe building a very efficient way that's not already done, and then get bought by the big boys? Like, how do you kind of get funding and then kind of take your product? Like, how does a developer navigate that way?
Well, honestly, we have become very institutionalized. You're 100% correct. So with us, for instance, I'm going to say we like institutions. Like, that's what we started here for. We're like Rage Against the Machines. But we take a lot more of a real-world application approach to that, as you mentioned, just hiding the relative Web3 layer about everything and using the blockchain layer. You don't need to be an institution to essentially utilize this in any way, shape, or form. For instance, I'm going to give a core example of one of those more recent companies we've actually invested into, called Lifeline. They're essentially a platform that brings life insurance to near zero, utilizing blockchain. But from the outsider perspective, it looks like a regular Web2 company. So it's all essentially around brand positioning and how you position yourself in the industry. You can either come in as someone that is like, hey, I'm a regular company, but my underlying tech is blockchain. You know, I've seen so many times relatively people we don't use the word crypto anymore because it scares off people. Web3 is now seen as a technical layer, and that's generally the approaches we need to take. So, for instance, this company called Lifeline, what they've essentially done, it's front-facing. You sign up, you can get about 90 to 98% off on your insurance claims, your health insurance claims, just by essentially calling the API that all the insurance companies need to call, and it's relatively quite expensive. And then on top of that, to bring the cost further down to near zero, all they did was just entering a yield model in the back end. That's it. They've implemented a yield staking implementation to the point where it's just like, cool, you put your capital here, we convert it to a cryptocurrency, in this case a stable coin. When you need that relevant capital to essentially pay for medical care or medicine, everything is covered. You're not relatively paying a large dollar amount. So it comes down to the point of, hey, you just need to hide it as a developer. Like, it might not feel sexy, but if you want to play with the big boys and want to get in that position where an institution or a BlackRock, for instance, is interested in you, that is what you need to do. You kind of need to hide the sexy part of Web3, or what I guess we found sexy in this case.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I think, gone are the days where you could raise money as a crypto company because you were a crypto company. Like that was true in 2017 and 18. Now you raise money as an AI company because you call it an AI company, right? But like crypto's lost its shine. And so now you need to think about this from a fundamentals perspective in the way that business, the things that have always been true of business is you're going to have to build a credible community around your product. And the only way to do that is to build something that people want, right? And yes, you're going to have to game some of it, and you're going to have to fake it until you make it, and you're going to have to get out there and make your voice heard and, maybe buy some ads, etc. But at the end of the day, none of that matters if you don't have a credible product, if you're not making something that people want. And I think the institutions that are pretty good at cycling that. As much as I hate Google, something they did very well, especially in the early days, was try something, and when it's not working, kill it and try the next thing, right? Or as startup founders call it, pivoting. So that's really the game you want to be playing. It's so easy to get distracted with what's happening in the crypto world and all of these unlocked Discord communities you can pay for. And at the end of the day, you're just building fluff around something that nobody cares about. So to me, it's about doubling down on the fundamentals. Am I making something that people want? Do I have credible feedback? Do I know that people actually want that? And if I've got that part right, then yeah, let's start playing the games of building communities around it and chasing down funding by maybe using more hyperbole and buzzwords than we would otherwise. But just get that first bit right.
Completely agree.
Awesome. We've got time for one more question. Comment? No? Alrighty, guys. Please give Simon and Jordan a round of applause.
Thanks.
Alrighty, guys, we are going to take our last break before our last session with Craig Reese. It's going to be exciting, so please take this break quickly. We've got about 5 minutes, so go ahead, use the bathroom, grab something to drink real quick, make a post. Why make a post? Because the first 10 that make a post that we catch will get free lunch on us. We will give you a gift card for 200 Rand that you guys can use at any of the restaurants here in the building. So, 5 minutes, ladies and gentlemen, and then we will return with Craig Reese.
Going red. Testing.
Yep. Alrighty, guys, we've got about 1 minute and 30 seconds before we're gonna have Craig hit the stage. So please, let's return to our seats and let's get ready for this next session. Okay, doing a real quick countdown. 30 seconds, please, before we get started. Pull up to the stage. We're going to be inviting Craig Reese. All right, ladies and gentlemen, please come back to your seats. We're about to get started. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're about to get started. We're going to invite Craig Reese to the stage. We are going to be talking about future-proofing your build, anticipating second-order effects. So for many of you guys that are experiencing a hackathon for the first or second time, or have worked with some of the foundations, this is an insight into innovation. And we are so very lucky to have Craig speak, leveraging a lot of his experience in software development. So Craig, welcome to the stage.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to be talking about a topic really that I think is passionate to me, and that's really around the second order effects. How do you future-proof your application? Because I think the reality is there's a lot of great ideas, there's a lot of exciting innovation, but many startups struggle. And most startups fail, not necessarily because the idea is bad, but because the execution is bad. You can have a great idea, but how do you get people to stay with that great idea? How do you give people a continued great experience? And how do you continue to build your application for scale? Because another problem many organizations face is that they're building applications that then are struggling to scale because they've just designed it for that initial use case. But now you've got to go from 2,000 users to 1 million users. That requires a completely different line of thinking and a completely different software architecture. That's a big shift, and many companies struggle to make that shift. So I really want to unpack that a little bit more today. But I also want to pivot, because I also want to be honest with every single one of you. You're probably not going to be writing your own code today or this weekend. No, you're going to be using AI. So now, how do we do this in the sphere of AI is really what I want to have a look at, because I think that's really the gap that we now need to consider. It's no longer just about, well, how do we do this in the traditional software sense? How do we do this in the AI sense? So really, what I want to do is just firstly just help you understand how is software development changing as a result of recent technological changes. How do we then change that lens of what quality means? Because quality is what's going to get you that long-term value. And then how do we make sure that our applications are future-proof? Before I continue, if anyone wants to know a little bit more about me, my name is Craig Reezy. I work at Old Mutual. I'm the head of engineering at Old Mutual for the group. I also own a board game company called Risky Games. Have a website, and I also have some books. So everything, if you're interested in the topic of how to design software properly, you're welcome to have a look at some of the books that I have out on that. But I think if we want to look at the future and we want to future-proof our software, I think we've also got to look back. I think one of the mistakes a lot of young people make is they're excited about what they want to try and do. They're focusing on new technologies all the time. AI is coming out. Obviously, we're here, and there's a lot of talk around blockchain and how that works. But at the end of the day, if you really want to make things work, you've also got to look at the past. The reality is software is software. And yes, it's changing fast, and we have to learn about new technologies all the time. But a lot of the approaches that keep those companies that have been existing for 50, 60 years going and successful are the ones that you need to be learning from too as well. I think too many organizations focus on how can I be the next startup? How can I be the next great startup? And then 20 years later, that startup's dead. So you've got to also learn from the past. And I think you've also got to understand how modern technology is changing things to then be able to understand that. So don't just constantly focus on what the new technology can do. Rather ask yourself, how is that new technology different to how we used to do it? Might help you to be able to better understand that. So with us particularly focusing on, software development, and AI is changing the way that we think, we've also got to understand, well, what does that mean? We used to have, when it came to software delivery and software development, very deterministic ideas. We knew what we wanted to build. We had an idea of how we wanted to build it. And then we started to build roadmaps of, I'm going to do this to get there, to get there, to get there, to get there. How do people build software today? They put a prompt into a chat engine and hope for the best. That's not going to be very successful. It's not going to help you too much. But the reality is, this is what people are doing. So how do we change and shift the software development paradigm where what used to be very deterministic, very certain, very focused, is now all of a sudden turning into something where, yes, we can put in very detailed prompts, and we're doing a lot of prompt engineering and trying to learn how to put prompts into AI engines to get a lot out of it, but you actually have very little control of its output. Why? Because you're not writing it. You're entrusting AI to think that it knows what you want. And if you don't know how to articulate it well, and if you don't know how to really be able to define your software well, it's probably not going to end up giving you what you want. Or it might give you what you want, but what's often the case is it does a very bad job at it. AI is very good at solving a problem. It's very good at ideation. It's very bad at building really good software. Why? Because we're just giving it big prompts, and we're just trying to focus on the small things. The reality is, a software application is not just 1 or 2 or 3 files. It's thousands of different microservices talking to each other. That requires something that AI often can't do. That requires us understanding our systems very clearly. But it is very important to understand those differences and how much more you are now dependent on things like your data, the different insights you're providing, the way that you're going to now be writing your different prompts. All of that now changes the way that we think. So I'm not saying don't use AI. I'm saying use AI. It's going to speed you up. It's fantastic in what it can do. So please do use AI for your hackathons. I don't know if you guys are allowed, but please do. I really recommend using AI as much as possible to help speed you up. What I am saying is just be aware that it can be very brittle. It can be very frail. And you really need to be able to understand all these type of things. Those things that we used to rely on for good quality software is now taken away from you. That predictability, that mindset, that good architecture can sometimes be removed by our use of it. And so it's important just to understand these things. And how do we actually then build and measure software from an AI perspective? So what are those challenges that it gives us? I've already focused on the non-deterministic part out of it, that we can't control what AI gives us. Is a problem. Context is another critical thing. AI understands context you give it. But the reality is we live in software where the context is constantly changing and the world is constantly changing. You have an idea of something that might work, a customer goes and does something completely different. AI is not going to understand the context of that customer. It's not going to understand the context of your users. It's not going to understand the context of the world we're living. How do you manage that context when you're utilizing AI to be able to explain what you need properly becomes tricky. The data you feed it is critical. I think many organizations want to build some AI-powered application, but really at the end of the day, it's the data that you give it. What type of data are you giving it? How accurate is the data? Is the data even shaped correctly? Is the data duplicated? Is it clean? What effort have you done to put the data in a better space? Because I think too many people jump on the idea of, oh, AI can solve this problem. And I've seen people do that, and they even can use really great AI engines, put it into applications, and they still get the wrong output because they focus too much on the AI part of it and not enough on the data part of it. Get the data right. Spend time on the data. Make sure if you want to be utilizing AI in your solution that you also start to think about, well, how am I going to capture the data? What does my data look like? What am I going to do with this data? Very important. That evaluation difficulty thing that I put in there is how do we even now evaluate software? Because again, we used to know that software, it was very clear. If I'm building an application, okay, it needs to do this, then it needs to do this, then it needs to do this, and we would start to build a very clear list of things that we know our software needs to do to be able to work. If we're not going to be pushing this through some sort of prompt engine and getting AI to deliver it, we've lost some of that. We don't know. How do we evaluate what good looks like is all of a sudden changing? Because it's no longer clear that it needs to do this. We're basically asking it the unknown and now hoping that what it does can produce some sort of output. That's a challenge. And then the last thing is that integration complexity. Again, we don't build systems that exist in a bubble. We've got multitudes of systems out there. Every single application is essentially thousands of different systems working together. AI is very effective at often piecing just a few of those together, at least in its current state. We're still far away from AI being able to automatically integrate and work with thousands of different applications in one seamless space, particularly if you're going to ask this one prompt, another developer is going to ask this one prompt, and how do they actually work together? So we've got to be very careful with that. So it's always important that we need to understand if we're going to be building these things and future-proofing our applications, that we are aware of the challenges we're going to face now that AI gives us. I'm not going to go into how we're going to define all of that. But again, if you now want to think about, well, how do I future-proof my application? You've got to think about that word quality, because that's what differentiates your application. And quality, and by quality, I don't just mean of, oh, this is great to use. By quality, I mean, is the software maintainable? Can the software last a long time? Is the software usable? But does it work? Because if you're going to have a great idea and your application experience is terrible, you're going to lose customers. They're not going to be interested in what it is that you have to give them. So you've got to think about quality all the time. Quality needs to be a big differentiator. That's what makes the difference between a lot of apps that tend to then last a long time. So you want to then understand, if I'm going to be utilizing AI and be thinking about how we're going to utilize an AI, what's my accuracy like? How accurate are the results that I'm giving? So if I'm going to be pushing something through, does the model that I produce correctly predict the right results or not? Do I even know what the right results look like? If I don't know what the right answer is, how can I know that AI is giving me the right answer? We've got to be able to think about that. We've got to be able to utilize reliability. If I'm going to be utilizing AI a lot, is it going to give me a lot of very different outputs or not? And especially if you're going to be building AI into an application. I've seen many applications do this. They've got AI capabilities. I feed it one prompt, it gives me an outcome. I feed it another prompt. I can feed it the same prompt again, and it gives me a different answer. Something's wrong. Why did the same AI give me different answers for the same question? That shows that the AI is not really answering the question properly and not working consistently. So also focus on the reliability when you're building stuff into that, because that's important. Safety and ethics is another big thing people forget about. It's part of the blockchain when we're trying to work on it. Obviously, blockchain is built around this whole idea of safety, privacy, ethics is very key to what that stands for. AI almost takes that away. So how do we ensure that we're building safety and ethics into it? Because you want your AI to behave correctly. You want it to be able to behave in a way that's within line with the laws in which it operates. You want it to be able to make the user experience great. You don't want AI to now become harmful to someone who uses it. But you also don't want AI to have access to the data that it shouldn't. It's one of the key things that we're struggling with within a large organization is the data privacy aspect. How do we do that properly within the space of AI. That usability and UX now becomes very important, because we need to have very clear how is the system being used, and that UX. And that becomes very difficult sometimes within the realms of AI, because AI is trying to solve certain problems. So we need to be very clear in terms of that usability experience of how we use AI in our applications, especially with those predictable responses. Again, it's got to meet the user's needs. It's got to solve a problem. It can't just exist for the sake of having AI in it. And then performance. Speed, scalability, cost efficiency is vital. AI is very expensive. People love this idea of, I've got this AI chatbot, and this AI chatbot is going to do amazing things. The average AI chatbot probably costs about R7 a chat, because they're badly designed. Now you think, okay, well, this is going to create things. And now imagine your users using this in production every single time. They're asking prompts and stuff like that. You're spending R7, and that's R7 across cloud spend. You know, it's across other sort of expenses that are coming up through your entire ecosystem. That's not very good. So you really want to be able to working on that. You want to be very aware of the performance of an application when you're building it and how much it's costing. So build it with cost efficiency in mind. AI sounds great, but again, a lot of AI engines are not built very efficiently, and over time, companies are realizing that they're actually not bringing money, they're actually spending more because of all this massive cloud spend that they're then introducing. So it's also something to consider as well as an aspect of quality when you're trying to build your application, is does it actually do this quickly, and can it do it very efficiently? Otherwise, we might need to revisit it, because you're probably not going to get the output, at least financially, that you think. So it's definitely something key to be thinking about. Just on the topic of AI, I don't want to, it's not really my main point, but I did want to just briefly just show this. If you are thinking about LLMs and how to use them and building AI into an application, because it's obviously the cutting edge. You want that venture capitalism you just heard in the previous talk. These days, people aren't interested too much in whether you're on the blockchain. They want to know, do you have AI? So people want to build stuff that's got AI in it. But have you actually thought about everything when it comes to AI? What about the quality? How are you governing your AI? What's the governance like? Have you thought about these things? Because there needs to be a lot of thinking around it, particularly on the ethics and governance side. I think a lot of people don't give it enough thought. They want to use AI just to be able to do things, but they don't realize that if you're pushing AI through to your customers and something goes wrong, or your AI all of a sudden is starting to contravene something that it shouldn't, it actually becomes you that are legally liable. AI has got no legal liability. You, as the person who put AI in an application, are fully liable for everything that AI does wrong. So it's important to understand these things. Just think about them. Think about how you're going to structure your AI, how you're going to put that into an application in a way that's going to make sense. So yeah, just important that you think about these things and try and test for them. Try and actually think, well, is there hallucination in my AI? How do I test for that? How do I build some things around us to prevent hallucination in what it's doing? Put those focuses on it. Making sure that from a toxicity or bias perspective that you're building in safeguards to prevent that from happening. Don't just let the AI do its thing. You've got to build safeguards. You've got to be able to protect it. Even if you're using an AI model that's already got this built in, always double check, own it yourself, be able to build these things in. It certainly helps a lot. And yeah, I think another sort of thing is data. I mentioned data already, the importance of data. AI and applications that use AI are only as effective as the data you feed them. So spend a lot of time focusing on how you plan to integrate data into your solution and what you intend your solution to do. So you want to understand those foundations of data quality. Because if you're going to throw bad data at any solution, you're going to get poor outputs. And we're going to, particularly in AI, that becomes just incrementally worse. Organizations will often tell you that your key currency as an organization is your data. Google is the success it is because of its data. Facebook, data. Microsoft, data. Apple, partly data. They've got some other things, but most of it's data. It's what they have about their users that helps them to be able to be that game changer. It's that information that they can read and review. But they haven't just got there by accident. They've got there because they've carefully thought about data over the years, how they structure their data, what they do with the data, making sure that the data is relevant and actually giving them information that they need. So that's important. Think about your data. Applications need data because you're going to have users. What are the users going to do? How are you going to get that data? Because that's how you understand your customer better. You can't pitch and pivot your application to cater for the customer if you don't understand what the customer is or who the customer is and what they want. So how do you get that data? How do you build that into the application? And if you want to use AI, how do you do it in a reliable manner? Think about your data. So it's something you want to be focusing a lot, is how do you get your data right? And safety first. I think when it comes to AI, LLMs, you want to make sure that safety is that number one priority of what you're putting in, particularly when it comes to data, integrity, ethics, and what you're doing. You want to be able to ensure that there are a variety of laws out there. POPI is one of them in South Africa, but there's the GDPR as well in Europe, which is very strict on what you can and can't do with data. And I think a lot of companies that are starting up now are running into that problem where they've got great ideas and they want to expand, but now they've now built models or built ideas on AI that might not be ethical, and information that they maybe shouldn't have about a customer because it wasn't protected. That throws in something. So make sure that you also think about that realistically and put safety first in what you're building. And when you're thinking about that, these are some of those things that you want to, again, be thinking about when it comes to your LLMs and that security and that safety first thing. Again, I'm not going to go through all of these things, but I think they're just building blocks that I want to leave you with in terms of things to think about when it comes to security, how good your data is, what your model security needs to look like. And I've got there the failures that you have, and then how do you protect those failures, things that you want to try and have. So if you've got data leakage, look at encryption or access control. Look at the data integrity that you want to be able to deal with, to be able to solve those problems, along with your infrastructure and your ethical stuff. Again, it's how you build your application makes a significant difference. And you want to be able to make sure that every little node that you're building in is secure, from the infrastructure that you're building on, to the models that you're utilizing, to the data that needs to feed on. Every one of those aspects needs to be very secure in how you think about it, to be able to then deal with those ethical considerations that you have. So what are some of the strategies that you want to have for building quality and thinking about that long-term gain? Firstly, engineering principles. I'm a software engineer at heart. How you build software is important. I'll tell you one thing. I've been in this industry for over 20 years. The technology has changed a lot. The foundations of software engineering haven't. Good written code is still good written code. Whether it's written for the cloud or whether it's written for a mainframe system, it still makes a difference. So those pillars of good written code still apply. Make sure that you're focusing on software engineering principles. Yes, they evolve with time. We're evolving them right now with AI. We've evolved them with blockchain, but they're still there and relevant. Be aware of that. Again, don't just focus on the idea. Focus on what you need to do with the idea. How do you build the idea? You want to be close to those details. Your testing and evaluation frameworks become critical. How you test your software is very critical, and how you evaluate whether the software is good enough is important. Prioritize that and make sure that that's a big focus of what it is that you're doing. Your safety and ethics checks, how you observe whether the software is or what the software is doing, and can you respond to it in time. So that you want to be able to observe what's going on in production, and then be able to respond and get that feedback going in. And then you want to put those guardrails and fail-safes in place, which I think leads me on to my key point around quality gates. Whatever you want to do in your application cycle, you need to make sure that you're constantly iterating on it. I think one of the big mistakes is that people will build this, and then they will build another thing, and then they've got this great idea, and they've just built this whole bunch of things, and then they try and test it at the end, and a whole bunch of things are not working. Great ideas, build, start small, iterate. Start small, iterate. Build the quality in, iterate. Build the quality in, iterate. Don't just try and build a big application and then think, well, how are we going to deploy this application? And now we've got this big application. Let's put it into a pipeline and let's find out how to test it. Doesn't work. Start small. From your very first line of code, write write the first few tests, push the code through. Does it work? Great. Now let's do the next one. Now let's do the next one. Because that's going to help you to then be able to get better when it comes to what you need to do. You want to be able to have something like this, where every little commit becomes a small little trigger, something to test that I've just made a small change and it's going to make a difference. I'm then going to push my code somewhere into a feature branch. What does it do there? How does it build into something? So now I'm going to increase my test coverage. I'm now going to do something. I'm now going to deploy this into some environment. How do I make sure that that environment's healthy? Now I'm going to do a component test because I need to ensure that I've deployed this into an environment. But now how do I make sure that the different components are actually working together and not just the individual code that I've just tested? And then you go from there. And then it pulls into bigger testing cycles and bigger testing cycles. And every single cycle needs to become extensively tested. So I think the best way to really be able to future-proof your application is to put something like this in place where you constantly test in your software. Every single line of code, every single time you're introducing change, you should know what's going on. Those CI/CD pipelines are critical to the success of your application. Because again, applications can be a great idea. You can have a big launch and go into production with this big launch. You start to introduce changes, it becomes complicated because now the changes start to introduce failures somewhere else, particularly if you're using AI into it, because AI doesn't always understand the context with which something was built. And it starts to introduce more failures along the way. And now your development comes to a halt because now you're spending more time fixing defects than you are actually adding value. It's because you haven't put something like this in place to be able to catch. Every single time you were pushing code through it, was saying, oh, something broke there, something broke there. It gives you time to refine your idea and build it properly. Very critical to be able to do this. Again, you want your software to last. You don't just want an idea to be around and be effective for a couple of months. You want your software and your products to be able to last. And this is important. And that leads us to, as we close out, just how do we test them? How do we test our LLM-powered applications now that we're thinking about AI and everything we build? Data quality, data quality, data quality. Test your data, make sure that your data is correct. Do a lot of test-driven development, particularly at that unit level. What I advise my developers to do is if you want to use AI to write your code, write your tests first. Have a very clear idea of how you want your application to work with different inputs and outputs. And if you write that, and then you use AI to push it through, there's a higher chance AI is going to solve the problem because you've already thought about its testing. And what it does is it realizes the test failed, it pushes through, the agent keeps going, and the agent eventually passes all your tests because you've thought them through. Saves you a lot of time. Work with golden data sets. Again, data is very variable. We can't control everything. But if you have proper golden data sets with which you can build with, that helps, especially in the development realm. If you know that this data produces the right output, focus on that data. You know that this data is like, how do you get that data there? Because once you go into production, you're going to have a lot of different types of data going on from a lot of different types of customers. And you need to be able to have some level of predictability in your testing process. That's your golden data that you want. Your linting and your quality control from your scans, make sure that all of that there, and then security and performance, ensure that you're scanning that all the time. Very important that you're building that in everything that you are doing. And I'm not going to go through this slide, but this is just a case of every little thing that you can test. Test. Every little idea, how you can test it becomes very critical. So yeah, hopefully these things will give you a better insight in terms of how you can make your application, not just moving from a great idea into something that will really work and last a long time. Thank you. Let's take some questions. Sure, there's a question.
So you mentioned. We've been testing, like, I think me and my team, right? So AI is very good at building SPAs, like simple SPAs with integrations, and there are various IDEs that integrate AI. And we've been testing out Kiro for a while now, and it's pretty good with its specs and everything. So the whole idea of what we were trying to do is, so if you give AI like a link to a specific site, right? And you tell it duplicate the site or copy the site, it does that like almost to the T, right? And so there are open source projects and programs, fully built open source projects and programs. It got expensive when we were doing it, but like do you think, like, I'm trying to pick your brain, do you think, like, in the future when it gets less expensive, because what we tried to do was download a repo of a small project, right? And a couple of small projects, and that was like the data set or database, right? And then what we did was we told AI, using these projects and the methodologies and the structure of all these projects, could you possibly duplicate or create something similar to this? And with the SPA thing, it worked out like almost fine. Do you think like when, in the near future, when it gets easier or cheaper, like all you would need to do is possibly download a repo of a pre-built project and be like using these methodologies, using this structure, giving it the right prompt specs, all the use waterfall, agile, whatever, to build an application similar or almost like this? Do you think in the near future that would be possible?
I think it will be possible. It really depends again on what problem you're trying to solve. I think a lot of times like that works. We know it works now in very small things. I've done it with some small repos as well. Like, can you redo this? And AI can be very good at reproducing something. It's not always very good at reproducing something that's very complicated. And then that's also where the data situation comes in, is your code repo is not your data. So how do you can unit test something, but what type of data are you going to use against it? And I'll give you an example. It's like, let's say, for instance, you want to be able to build an application that works for, you want to build something and you've now gone to this fintech company and you've been able to reproduce their code through AI, got something similar, but you actually planning to launch in different countries that might have different needs and different data things. There might be some differences and nuances you haven't thought about. The other challenge you have, and I think this is where I see the biggest problem, is when you wrote the code yourself, you tend to understand it. When you didn't, you don't. And then when you're trying to fix it when there's bugs and issues, you can't do that so effectively because you don't really understand how it's done that. So the other thing I also you want to be very careful of is if you're using AI a lot, is actually go through and make sure you understand how the application works and why it does it, because it's not that initial AI prompt to build something that's the biggest issue. It's that constant updating. Because you've now got an application that works, but great, there's a new version of Node out. All of a sudden, there's a new version of, it was maybe written in TypeScript, and now there's a new version of TypeScript out. Now there's this new bug around that you need to build a vulnerability for that requires an update to a package. All of these things have a knock-on effect in how your application works. And you want to use AI to fix all of that stuff, that could become problematic because AI tends to rewrite the code as opposed to fix the specific issue. So you got to just be very careful. I think we will get there in the future, but I don't think we want to lose that problem-solving ability, because then we lose the essence of what it is that we're trying to build.
We've got time for one more question.
You mentioned your developers, and I'm assuming this is at Old Mutual.
Yep.
Old Mutual being a corporate.
Yes.
How much do you actually leverage AI that it's actual a net benefit? Because I'd imagine Old Mutual's got a lot of mature software where a lot of new things, if it's not greenfields, would be small little additions that is not that much for Bose code. And you mentioned test-driven development where like you test out and then let AI play with it. Do you guys actually leverage AI enough where it helps the developers? Like, I can think of a senior engineer leveraging, because they would explain the design patterns of how that maybe want and maybe a new component. Also with mature software, I'd imagine you'd be extending more on existing stuff than refactoring, because you actually don't want to refactor too much on legacy stuff. Do you guys get the net benefit with having AI in the code?
I think it's a great question, and the reality is you don't get as much net benefit on an older system than what you would on the new. Where we find in AI useful is modernization and being able to do the refactoring quicker. What used to take time is sometimes a lot quicker. Like, let's take, for instance, the Java example. You want to migrate from Java 18 to 24. There's always these nuances that you need to update. AI does it very quickly for you. So that basic mundane stuff, it speeds up. What it does is it allows us to get going faster. But we still need to go in and play with the systems and be able to refine and refactor them better. We are making smaller additions all the time. The one advantage we do have when it comes to utilizing AI is AI can already see a very well architectured application. So AI is not trying to build something that might not scale well. It's building on top of something that's already very well designed. So the small iterative stuff it does tends to be a little bit more reliable and integrating better with what we do. And we already have the test frameworks in place so we can catch the mistakes, which does also help us as well. Great, thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please, a round of applause for Craig.
Thank you.
Alrighty, guys, so we are getting ready to transition. I just want to take a moment and kind of recap the conversation that we had so far from some of our earliest conversations on the opportunities that are in the ecosystem, from wallets to data and opportunities there, AI as an opportunity to scale your development. But we do have a hackathon that is about to go down. And so I'm really excited to have Alan, who is leading that initiative, come up and talk a little bit about that.
Thank you, Keone. So a fun fact, Keone has been the king of dev dad jokes. I was hoping you could give us a dad joke, but thank you, Keone. We are so excited to transition to the hackathon venue. A brief history. The hackathon started like 1 week ago from January 15th, and we've had close to over 250 guys actively participating, both virtually, and now we have transitioned to in-person. And I just wanted to share a few updates. So for the hackathon, if you are like participating from today, it has four tracks, that is payment and stablecoins, identity and security, then decentralized AI and deepin, and gaming and entertainment. Then we have a prize pool of 3K USD or $3,000 distributed across 4 tracks. So for each track, we will have one winner with a 750 USD prize pool. And a few hackathon reminders. So if you've been actively participating, please create or set up your account on Builderbase. And if you've been experiencing issues with logging in or creating an account, we are actively supporting or fixing those issues on Discord. So please raise a ticket on Discord. If you join the Discord channel on the general tab, you'll see all the instructions on how to create a ticket. And then we will have mentors, or we've been having mentors since last week, who have been doing an amazing job helping out in the technical side of things, in the business side of things. And it has been amazing just to get the feedback from you participants, from the mentors, and even from the virtual sessions, especially with the breakout rooms. And I'm so happy to even get to meet you guys in person. And as we transition to Within Code, we'll also have mentors on site. We will have a few workshops, both on the technical and the community side of things. And a quick reminder, the project submissions is tomorrow from the deadline is at 11:59 p.m. South African Standard Time. So while you go to build, please remember that the clock is ticking. So now the next steps is there is a bus that will take us to Within Code, and the bus arrives here at 1:30. So it will be on the left side at the just outside Time Out Market. So the bus will leave at exactly 2 p.m. So please get your lunch, network a bit, then we'll transition to Within Code. Thank you.
Check. Just a quick reminder, folks, I want to make sure that you guys do not miss your bus. So if you're going to get food, best case scenario, get it to go. That way you don't get stuck here. Leaves at 2 o'clock. All right? Get left or get right.